Hello, hello, hello. Hopefully you can hear and or see me, depending on what your preference may be. If you can, please do let us know. As we are back in our usual haunts and our usual position.
Guess who's back? Back again.
It was genuinely so fascinating to me to come home. And
look at that comments on screen. Look at this.
Yeah.
Maybe I should be going over here because it flips my camera, as I recall.
I feel like they're almost immediately going to go up under you, but y'all are just slowly being imported into Andy's body, sustaining him like psychers do the Emperor. But yeah, it was very funny coming home. We made such good time that they actually sent us on a detour. So instead of flying over Memphis, they started heading southeast, and everyone on the plane was like, "Where are we going? Where are we going?" They like turned us back because we were moving too fast. Normally it's supposed to be like a 10.5-hour flight. We would have, if they had gone straight there, we would have made it in like 9 hours. It was crazy. Also, I just lost Andy. He was so fascinated by what I had to say that he just vanished into the abyss. Oh, you're back.
What happened there? My screen just went dead. All the other screens went nope. I've got a feeling my browser just crashed on me.
Well, you're back now, so that's the important part.
Pretend nothing occurred.
Yeah, but overall, it was a decent trip. I landed just in time ahead of some giant storms. I literally came home, and it was like Wrath of God storm and tornadoes and everything, and I was like, good to be home. But anyway, so we're back, and today is going to be a pretty chill kind of getting back into things stream, where we're going to be talking about a notable part of our trip, where due to just some various shenanigans and stuff, Andy and I ended up doing a trip down to Nottingham to check out Warhammer World, which was my first time, and Andy's probably like...
Well, I have an intro for this particular stream. As you will note, I have been to Warhammer World a fair number of times down through history. So I will be discussing a little bit of that when we dive into our intro at the beginning.
I like how the little chat thing works. It's not going under Andy, but it fades into Andy. That's nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's quite nice, isn't it? It's okay. It doesn't go. It's like sitting there on top and going, ooh, ooh, ooh. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Interestingly, it does not flash. It just keeps it basic, even if it's a super chat or not, because you can see Vorn's is still normal.
And on that, I'm going to bring up a chat. Hey, Adam, I am delighted that you've got your dark deeds over at your side, particularly given that you're all the way from, I presume, New Zealand. How did you even get it down there?
I'm genuinely curious, Adam, if you would be so kind as to elucidate the story there. How did you get dark deeds in New Zealand?
So yeah, super cool. I'm quite liking this chat sitting over at the corner here.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good upgrade.
It's not bad, and particularly given that we ping in a quick comment there. For example, did you take some photos? Well, let's take a longer comment there. It says from Adam there. Yes. Notice it doesn't overlap. It's really nice.
Oh, that is nice.
Yeah, it sits up quite sweetly there in the corner.
Well done,
it's pretty
StreamYard. Well done.
Good job. There's one thing that I like about StreamYard. That's the piece of software that they're using. Is that it's, for the bits that it does, really slick and really simple, and involves zero thought. For the things it doesn't do, you just sit there cursing, wishing that it did it.
Special ordered it. Well, aren't you a favored supporter? We salute you, good sir.
And if I had a drink, I would raise it to you. In fact, I've got a can. I'll raise that. Thank you very much for buying Dark Deeds. We only need to sell another bajillion of them. So please, if you are out there, do pick up a copy right now and tell everybody that you know that they should probably buy 2 or 3 copies each as well. Say it with Dark Deeds. If you're thinking of marrying someone, give them a Dark Deeds. If it's their birthday, Dark Deeds. If it's Mother's Day, what better way to say thank you, Mother, than a copy of Dark Deeds?
And he's gonna be getting people killed. Oh yeah, Hawk. Yeah, that was very. Hawk literally paid an artist with a copy of Dark Deeds.
Well done, Hawk. You were amazing.
So a couple of little quick things before we get into the normal stream. First of all, just because these don't show up the way the StreamYard system works, thank you, Shady Spitch, for the 2 years on Twitch. Thank you very much for that support. And Castrata, thank you for the 33 months. Good Lord.
Super.
Also, tomorrow at 11 a.m. CST is the Warhammer Skulls event. I will be at. I suspect Andy will be busy because that's going to be at like 5 p.m.
5 p.m. I might be able to make that, you know.
If you can, you should. It's gonna be super fun.
Oh, I might be able to make that. We could do it together like pals.
Yeah. So we will attempt to do that. Andy's bike is picking up everything for your information. Mouth
okay, good. Thanks for
can opening.
Okay. Well, let me just pass that away a little bit there. It doesn't need to be so close.
You don't like Andy mukbang? Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so Skulls Day tomorrow afternoon should be a really good time. And yeah, with that, let's just kind of get into the early little super chats. Once again, this is a chill stream. I'm not expecting I imagine most people are going to look and be like, Warhammer World, what the fuck? But
you'll be missing one.
Yeah, we felt it was an interesting enough topic because of reasons we'll get into that it was worth a Wednesday episode. And
yeah, agreed.
Mr. Bourne, chat rising into Andy like a dispenser. I mean, you know that's how it works. It rises up into him, and then he speaks it. He's so violent urgent breaking, never foreseen news. The boob snakes are coming to Total War. Yeah, nobody knew that until just now.
Boob snakes.
I wish there are comments I wish I could share with y'all, but I can't relating to boob snakes. That it's a story for another day, sometime in the distant future. But
when it no longer matters, but yeah, totally. Poop snakes.
Man, if it is still on sale in September, I may suggest Dark Deeds for the Board Game Society at uni. That's
please do. That'd be great because it is a brilliant wee game. One of the things that we found most amusing is that for all the marketing hasn't really been there, so thus it hasn't got into people's hands. But everybody who's got a copy has gone, "This is great fun." Literally everyone. So the more people we can get it in front of, hopefully the more copies will eventually sell.
If only there was some kind of skilled publisher that could promote the game in a great fashion. Too bad there's none of those. Hawk Oddly, thank you very much for the 55 months for the new year. We should do a big compilation of Lorebeard versus Lore. Oh yeah, that could be fun. That'd be fun for a New Year's thing. And Vorn, thank you for the 25 months. Appreciate it, guys. I've been doing this for too long. All right, with that, is anyone else hearing some weird audio gaffes with Sotek's mic? You're the only person that said that so far, but if anyone else is hearing weird stuff on my end, please let me know. Yeah, very occasionally, because of the way it's set up on Sotek's side, if he gets very excited or laughs particularly loud, the mic goes, yeah, nope, cut it out. Especially because I just got back and like I completely shut everything down while I was gone. And like unplugged everything from the walls, yada yada yada. So if there's weird stuff, it wouldn't surprise me because I had to like redo everything. So if that continues to be a thing, just let me know. All right, should we dive into an intro? I think it's time. I think it's time as well. So this stream is a Wednesday stream, not a Sunday stream, because we're not actually discussing anything inside the Warhammer world. We're discussing Warhammer World itself, the location, the center of GW in Nottingham, the place you can visit to see all their cool stuff, not the actual world itself or anything in it. That's our Sunday streams where we discuss Warhammer lore forever. This is more of an aside. I sit back and discuss and also share thoughts on what Warhammer World was, is, and potentially could be. And that includes yourselves out there. If you've got any comments from the times when you were there, do please share them as we're going on, because if you've been, we'd love to hear what you thought or what you think it could have been or what you thought you expected it to be and it wasn't, because that's going to be part of this chat today. But me being me, if I'm going to introduce anything, I'm immediately going to say way back in time, back in 1997, Games Workshop moved its headquarters from Chewton Street, way down in Nottingham from me up in here in Edinburgh, where I got my where I got my very first interview, well, my second interview, to tell the truth, with Games Workshop, over towards Lenton in Nottingham, where they built themselves an entirely purpose-created new centre for everything that was Games Workshop. And along with that came plans for Warhammer World. Warhammer World being this new event space, this new shop, this new idea, this new center for all things Games Workshop that would be built and attached onto the side of the new Games Workshop headquarters.
I didn't visit Warhammer World when it first opened in 1999. I visited, however, at the very end of that year for the very first time. By this point, I had already resigned from Games Workshop once, and I was being headhunted to come back to the company. And I got sent a lovely set of emails and then phone calls saying, "Please, Andy, come on down and come to Warhammer World and have a chat with us. You know, we want you to come back." And I was like, "All right, fair enough." So, why wouldn't I? I came all the way down. I was a young man at this point, just 23 years old. I was, even at that point, though, beardy. I do indeed remember the head of retail coming in and going, "Andrew, I see you've got yourself a beard now," because the last time we had met, I did not have a beard. And he looked at me and he said, "Yes, you look like someone we should employ." Those early years. And when I arrived down there, I got to see the new head office in Lenton for the first time. And it was both a great surprise and also a bit of a shock, because I don't know, I expected when I first arrived at the newly opened Warhammer World that there'd be a nice little customer path that you would walk down that would be going, I don't know, shining lights. Warhammer World, Warhammer World! You know what I mean. And then you arrive at the shop and you go through the shop and it would have been great. But instead, it was an industrial estate. And we arrived at the industrial estate. I got taken out to the front and then led into Warhammer World. And at this point, Warhammer World was basically four things. Number one was the shop. Imagine it like a Games Workshop gift shop. And it was on the bottom floor. And now this is where I'm going to drop a warning. This was 25 years ago. So my memories of what this place was like 25 years ago might be wrong. So live with me. If you, for example, visited in 1999 or 2000, and you've got a slightly different version in your head, you're probably right. I had COVID really bad. It almost killed me. My memory's probably wrong. But in my memory, the shop was on the bottom floor. And you could go upstairs towards the exhibition centre and the exhibition hall, which is pretty cool. And then just off that, you had Bugman's Bar. So what were these four places? The shop was a Games Workshop, pretty much. A Games Workshop like any you've seen anywhere else. But they also had a couple of special things that you could only get inside Warhammer World, which made it a little bit special to come and visit. The exhibition centre, let's say the big display of everything Warhammery, was pretty damn cool, actually. It had an entire chapter of Ultramarines when I first came to visit it. And I thought that was cool because I'd painted some of those Ultramarines in that entire chapter. It was pretty cool, pointing out the ones I painted, going, "Oh, look at that. I painted those ones there. Ah! I'm a child." This big display full of the entire chapter was awesome. It had the original display of the Bretonians versus the Lizardmen 25 years ago. Yeah, okay, Pie Guy. Thanks for that. I was already about 25 when I was doing this 25 years ago because I'm freaking old. So it had the original display for 5th edition where all of the Lizardmen were sweeping out against the Bretonians. Big, massive diorama that was made for Warhammer 5th edition when it's come out. And that was cool as mince. The battle for Big Tooth River with all the orcs and all the rest. It was just loads of cool stuff. Big, huge dioramas. Plus it had effectively almost a museum. A bunch of the older dioramas that you saw in White Dwarves. It had a copy of 1st edition Warhammer, 2nd edition Warhammer, 3rd edition Warhammer, which was pretty cool too. And all of them had nice either little signs or, in my case, nice little tour guide leading me around saying, this is this one. And this is that one, which wasn't really needed because I was such a geek that I literally not only knew everything that was inside that lovely little display area, I owned most of it myself already, including 1st edition Warhammer, 2nd edition Warhammer. I had my own copies, but nevertheless, it was really nice to see them enshrined in their own little way. The event centre was, at this early point in the Warhammer world, it was basically a gym. I mean, I know that sounds weird, but it looked a bit like a gymnasium. You know, when you go into a school gym and it's just an open space with bare walls, and it had a bunch of relatively rubbishy tables, as I recall them. Apologies if you made that table out there and you thought it was your best table. My memory of it wasn't all that. And I was nonplussed. The event space, however, was going to become a core component of what Warhammer World was come to offer over the course of years. But from my perspective, it was just a big, empty, open space with a couple of little cabinets sitting on the end with some older miniatures from the studio painted in it, gleaming like little gems that you could ooh and coo over, which was quite nice. And then adjoining that was Bugman's. And let's be honest, that's what I was there for. Bugman's Bar. I wanted to see it. And it was pretty cool. It's basically a big themed pub. No other way of putting it. That's what it is. It's a big themed pub. And it was themed around, strangely enough, Warhammer Fantasy Battle and Joseph Bugman. And it sold Bugman's, and all the meals had funny little names. And you could buy your Warhammer food, drink your Warhammer drink, and that was kind of cool. You could buy yourself special Bugman Steins, which was awesome. A whole bunch of special Bugman stuff was available to buy. And I loved it. It was great. So when they eventually took me through that space into the staff canteen, sat me down and said, right, Andy, we want you to work for us again. I was, I'll admit, already pretty hyped because, hey, I'd just seen all this cool stuff over in Warhammer World. They knew their audience. They knew what to do. And when I was then getting my tour around, I got a tour around the studio, around the new manufacturing department. I ran into Adrian Smith, which was, as a small aside, really funny. If you don't know Adrian Smith, you should type Adrian Smith into Google bar right now. Adrian Smith art GW, and you will see so many extraordinary pieces of art that Adrian did, both from almost the beginning of Games Workshop right through to what was Adrian coming back to the studio for a second time, just like I was coming back to Games Workshop for the second time, because we'd both been working at Target Games just a few months earlier and had both resigned from it. So we were both in a place where we were being picked up by Games Workshop again for a second time. And I sat down, cut a very long story short. They convinced me to come back to Games Workshop, and I ended up running the store up north here in Edinburgh, a store that I had abandoned a couple of years earlier. And that was good. Everything was great. I was back with Games Workshop. My second visit to Warhammer World.
That's very interesting. I'll check that out.
I need to go check Adrian's channel. Oh, he had a really cool... a small aside, met Adrian not that long ago, and he had a cool video that he had made. Truly awesome. So I wonder if it's there. I'm going to go check it. So about 8 months later, no, it's about a year later, I was summoned back to Lenton, which is where Warhammer World is, because Games Workshop was restructuring everything. And already things were beginning to change in Warhammer World. The store had already been shifted about a fair bit. The amount of stuff they were offering changed. I got another tour around the big displays of all the dioramas, which got changed a little bit here or there. A few extra new ones had been added to what was there before. And I got summoned back down because the company was being restructured entirely. And they talked about the plans that they had for Warhammer World, where it was going to be effectively the center of all things Games Workshop. All their biggest tours would take place inside, their biggest tournaments, would take place inside the event center. And the store would become an even bigger Games Workshop store. And I was quite excited about all of this. And we chatted amongst ourselves. In fact, one of the people I chatted with most was a chap called Baz. Baz, who was the manager of the Glasgow store at that point. I was the manager of the Edinburgh store. And we were close friends. I'd known Baz since like the early mid-90s, somewhere like that, a long time. And we got another tour around there. And then I got taken off aside to have a big, long chat about what was happening here and what they were doing to the company. And I learned that my store, the Edinburgh store, was no longer going to be just a store. It was going to be the center of all things Games Workshop in the north, because that's rocking. And I was like, okay, what's that involve? Ultimately involved me having to drive around Scotland and the north of England for the next 4 or 5 years, because I was being promoted without being told to an area manager. That was lovely, except I couldn't drive. And they were like, don't worry about it. We'll just pay for all your trains and we'll pay for your driving lessons. That sounds lovely. But I didn't want to do it. I was happy just messing around doing my own thing in my little corner. And they sat there going, but, wait a minute, but you, we want you to be an area manager. To which I said, I don't want to do it. And they then said, but, and I said, look, if there's still a manager job in Edinburgh, I'll consider it. But he said, can't, because that's now an area manager's place. So I resigned for a second time, allowing Baz to become the manager there, which was great for Baz because he took over the job that I had, became an area manager in the north, did loads of cool stuff, and moved on. So I left Games Workshop the second time, moved on to eventually write for Games Workshop instead over in Black Library, working on the role-playing game for Black Industries, having the time of my life with Games Workshop in a slightly different route to what I was doing before. And it wouldn't be for a long time before I eventually went back down to Warhammer World again. Not until I was running Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition. And by this time, Baz was the manager of Warhammer World, which was cool. He was the chap who was running everything, which was great because my mate was down there. And when I got summoned down to Games Workshop to effectively pitch everything that was going to be Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition after the release of the new book, I got another tour around Warhammer World. And that was super fun because I got to look back at what Warhammer World was when I first came there. I still remember that first managers meeting where they were saying, the company's changing. And we all sat in Bugman's Bar, all the managers from across the company, watching different things on big screens and generally having a laugh and comparing what it had become to what it was. And it was interesting because the shop now dominated. It took both the bottom floor and up into the second floor. It was now a 2-story shop. And the stairs that moved up from the bottom to the top were almost a gallery of big, huge Games Workshop pieces of art. Say, Warhammer World's freaking awesome. Yeah, man. And it was pretty awesome moving up past all those big hanging flags going, yeah, this is pretty cool. There was now more statues. Of course, there was on the outside a big, huge rhino tank. But even by this time, the rhino tank was already quite old. The statues on the outside had changed also. In the time when I was first there, it was a big Space Marine, and that was pretty much it. It had been replaced by, I don't want to call it an Age of Sigmarine because that's really unfortunate. But that's what it was.
Stormcast Eternal, yeah.
Okay, if you must. It was a Stormcast Eternal sitting on the outside. And it was a really cool statue. I was like, yeah, this is freaking cool. And I got a tour around the place. The shop was bigger. The amount of stuff that you could buy in the store had kind of improved. I mean, it had loads of new merch. A lot of that merch had come from either the licensing department or stuff they were doing themselves. Tons of t-shirts and a few new things that you couldn't get anywhere else. And I thought that was quite cool. I then got my tour around the miniatures display. And this is when I remember back then going, that's a shame, because it was almost exactly the same type of display that I had gone through 25 years, no, in this case, 20 years earlier. It was just all the Warhammer displays had been replaced by Age of Sigmar displays. So we had Caradon overlords flying over with big clouds and such like. But the museum aspect of it all had kind of disappeared, and it was now just miniatures, nothing but miniatures. So if you happen to be a visitor trying to learn everything about Games Workshop, you kind of learned that Games Workshop was a miniatures company, and that's it. And the only thing they were interested in now was either broadly the miniatures they were selling now, which was 95% of what could be seen, or a little bit about their history at the very beginning. Plus, there was an edition of a sword, which had been dropped off from Lord of the Rings when, who was it that popped in? Because you had it was Aragorn. When he dropped by and given them an Aragon sword, and he dropped by and given them the sword as a little present. And I went by the big, huge display that goes down the stairs of a big 40k battle, got told about the hidden assassins that you should point out for. And I'll be honest, when I went through this time, it was awesome because each one of the displays were showing different armies. A lot of them had really cool kit bashes on them. And lots of them were using miniatures in a way I hadn't seen, with lots of tiny little dioramas in the bigger battles. So you could see how maybe one area was being taken over by a dragon, or all the dwarves were coming rushing out to try and stop it, whatever else it might be. It was pretty cool. And then went out, came out the other side, went to Bugman's. Bugman's had changed a little, but not much. But the main area where you could play, the exhibition area, had been significantly changed. It now had ramparts all the way around it and big pennants hanging down. That was pretty cool. All of the games tables were now no longer rubbish, which you would hope would be the case. All the scenery was fine. And it was quite clear that this was basically now just a giant Games Workshop. If you'd ever been to the Manchester Megastore, which was the big store that they opened in the mid-90s down in Manchester, you didn't actually get that much less there than you would have at the Warhammer World version, because the Megastore had about 15, 20 tables. I can't remember. I remember when James was the manager there, he used to boast how many tables we had, because I only had 4 in my shop, 4. And he said there were like 20 of these buggers. Anyway, I was like, yeah, this is a big shop, but I'll admit on that tour, I was a little bit... Wow. Yeah, I kind of missed the history of Games Workshop here, the big event. And on the outside, it was largely still the same. It felt like you were visiting an industrial estate. Nevertheless, it was really cool. And I sat with what was the licensing team then, had loads of discussions about what Warhammer was offering. And I'll be honest, I loved it. It was just a geek out day. And then we reach to almost today, when Sotek and I went down and visited Games Workshop. Now, this was Sotek's first ever visit to what had been roundly touted to him as the centre of all things Games Workshop. And it had been, 6 years since I was last there? No, that's not true. I went and met Gav Thorpe a couple of years early, about 5 years earlier, when we were doing the Pass of the Old Ones campaign. We sat in Bugman's Bar and pathed out that entire campaign and had an absolute laugh with each other. And then B. Sherry, who was my assistant producer in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, got a tour around Warhammer World led by some of the licensing team. Good times. But it had been about 5-6 years since I was last there, and I was expecting yet another change. Because that's what happens. Every year, someone will come in with a new idea and say, we could use the space to do this, or we could use the space to do that. And our most recent tour of the place, upon arrival, was the same industrial estate it always was. We dropped off, we went in through the main door after passing the Rhino, and I will leave Sotek to describe what he thought of the Rhino. The Rhino out there, passing by the various statues, going in, seeing the shop floor on the bottom, which again was spread over 2 floors, the shop. Went up the stairs, past all the pictures. We even took a picture of Sotek in front of one of those pictures. Good times. Went up to the shop above. Yeah, you do. Went up to the shop above. We got our tour around the exhibition, which was lovely. And again, it was almost identical to the one that I'd seen some 5-6 years earlier, with a couple of new dioramas dropped in, which was super nice to see. But it was, for me, a bit like a walk down memory lane because so little had moved. And it was just, again, some miniatures. But it was interesting because I was there with someone who didn't know what this place was going to offer. And he had some expectations. And I think those expectations are going to be one of the core components of what we're going to be discussing as we make our way through our opinions of what happened here. Because many of those expectations weren't met. Some were too high. Some were low. Some were absolutely met. But one that definitely wasn't was Bugman's Bar. And you might go, why? Because surely that's the bit that everybody loves. It was shut. Bugman's Bar was being refurbished. So we were left with Bugman's tow truck on the outside.
To be fair, the hot dog was very good.
It was really good.
It was very good.
It was very good. But yeah, there was no Bugman's Bar, which for me is one of the core attractions of going to Warhammer World, to sit down with all the cool Bugman-y goodness. But that was being updated. I presume it's being changed into a more Age of Sigmar facing Bugman's Bar rather than the Warhammer Fantasy Battle Bugman's Bar that has always been there in the past. But loosely speaking,
it could be old world Bugman's Bar.
It could be the old world Bugman's Bar. Who can say? But what I can say for certain is it wasn't there. And that, of course, goes immediately into the Book of Grudges, because that made our visit much less fun than it should have been. But beyond that, we had our little tour, we saw our shop, and then we realized there wasn't that much else for us to do. There wasn't a great thing on that day. There was no miniatures to paint. There was no experience for us to experience. So we kind of went to Nottingham Castle, which might sound slightly disappointing, but that's because, to a degree, to finish off my introduction, for me, it wasn't a disappointment because I knew exactly what to expect. But for someone who had no expectations, lost the bar, and had ideas of what it could include, it might have been a bit more disappointing than we might initially have expected. So that takes you through my experience of not just Bugman's Bar, but Warhammer World as a whole. A place I have been to, well, if you go by this intro, only 4 times. That's a lie. I skipped over a lot. I went to it quite a few times when I was working for Games Workshop. Let's pretend that didn't happen. And where should we go next then, Sotek?
I think where we should go next is getting caught up on chats and stuff. And then we will go from there and kind of break down various parts and various thoughts, because I do have a lot of thoughts. It's to the point that one thing I want to say is that, so there are 2 things I want to say before we really get into it. The first is that in light of a lot of the things I'm going to say today, I popped over to the Warhammer Cafe, which I live right next door practically. So over in Grapevine, Texas is the Warhammer Cafe, because for those that don't know, the actual American HQ for GW of the America branch is in Grapevine. So they built a shop right next to them when they got a really, I will say, very, very prime piece of estate in Grapevine's Old Town, which is very nice. And they built a shop there that was pretty much advertised as its Warhammer world in the US. Spoilers. Yeah, it is. And so that colored a lot of, I think, of my experience of that. I went back to Warhammer Cafe and kind of looked around to re-update my comparison. And then also, like Andy said, the particular day that we went, Bugman's was closed and there wasn't anything like super crazy going on. It was pretty quiet. Yeah. So, it wasn't like we were there for the grand release of a new edition or some major event that might have colored my experience differently. So with those two caveats out of the way, let's get into getting caught up on super chats and we'll go from there. Aaron, very random question. How do dwarves have any population with more men than women? And I'm assuming very strict marriage laws. Actually, no. Are most males asexual? So what I will say is no, dwarfs actually probably have a much looser idea of marriage laws than you would think, because like we can look back to the ancestor gods where Valea was married to Grugni and had sons with him, but she also had sons with Grimnir, even though she was not married to him.
I would overrule the loose laws, instead say different laws to human norms. And you'll find that many of the writers, when they've discussed dwarves, often forget this aspect of them while simultaneously reaffirming it in a later page on a different idea entirely. So you might find saying grudge lore, this is the how many male dwarves are born instead of how many female, but they don't discuss what that means for their actual society, which would be very, very different to human society. There is an excess of men, which means that there almost certainly is women marrying multiple male dwarves. And that is part of dwarf history as well. They just have different marriage setup to the human norm.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is that, and this is something I actually talked about, this was like 2 years ago now, when Lindsay came on, we talked a lot about how dwarf culture might actually work in regards to the fact that there's like one woman for every 7 males, so how that would need to function. We talked about that, so go check that out. You can find that on the Lorebeards playlist. But as far as like asexuality, generally speaking, when you have a good writer at the helm, dwarfs tend to have a much lower sex drive than most other, than like humans or elves, or halflings, Scott, especially halflings. Dwarves,
especially halflings. Yeah.
Dwarves, while dwarves are passionate, for dwarves, a lot of the time when you have books that kind of talk about, get anywhere near discussions of their like sexual encounters and sexual life, dwarves often come off almost more of that it's much more of a emotional connection, and that the physicality of it tends to be more of like not a duty per se, but like they're not as driven by sexual desire as other species are, which would make sense for the way they are built.
Yep, I agree. Yep.
Kobo, Mortis casts his judgment upon ye, and ye too. Raven Mirnus. Is that? I think that's a Dark Deeds quote, isn't it? Maybe, I don't know. Watchdog 3079.
I didn't say that. I totally know.
Chaps, off topic here. Have either of you seen any of the new Daggerheart system from Darrington Press? If so, what are your thoughts?
I've not paid as much attention to this as I should have done. Sometime back, I mean, I know a lot of the people over at Darrington. I know the head of the studio who's organizing everything. And at one point, I almost considered pitching Dark Deeds over towards Darrington. And I have not, sadly, checked up their system. So I can't, with any reliability, make any comment on it. Other than I do know the people at Darrington are excellent. So I imagine that it is very good at what it does.
And I have no idea what that is. So there you go. Downman, while at Warhammer World, did you attempt to steal the Kadive Story original model? How were you foiled? I didn't see it. It could have been that we just missed it because, admittedly, we were like chatting with people as we were going through the exhibit, and it was a lot of chatting. So it would be like, "Oh, look at this cool exhibit!" Blah 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 blah. Oh, look at this cool exhibit! Blah blah. It was a lot of that. So we might have just missed it, but I didn't see any Chaos Dwarfs.
No, neither did I. I think it would be fair to quote, in fact, one of the people that we were talking to. It was more of a romp through the displays than it was a very careful look at all of the displays because there was so much chat going down.
Yeah, but what I will say is I saw very little Warhammer Fantasy. I saw Old World, I saw Age of Sigmar, I saw 40K, and I saw Horus Heresy. I saw Necromunda, I saw Underworlds. I barely saw any Warhammer Fantasy. Very, very rare. And when I did see it, it was really old, like 3rd, 4th, 5th edition. 6th to 7th edition was pretty rare to come across.
It's funny because they're also the exhibits that I remember most fondly through 6th through 8th edition. Well, actually 5th through 8th edition, because it was 5th edition when I first came there. And there was loads of really impressive Warhammer sieges and Warhammer battles being recreated with resin water and lizardmen rising out of it to take on Bretonians, for example. Good times. But nowadays, Warhammer is obviously a part of Games Workshop's past. And it's interesting to see how little of Warhammer is considered to be part of that nowadays when you take a wander through Warhammer World, where most of it's concentrating on Age of Sigmar.
Kind of an interesting thing. When we got in there, so before we did the tour, we were wandering around the main play area. And just through sheer happenstance, because we were just looking around, we went way back in this corner that we probably really weren't supposed to be in, because it was right where the construction was happening. And tucked away in that corner was a display case that was facing towards the construction. So if you didn't go all the way around and turn around, you wouldn't see it. And it had no signs or anything. It had no explanation plaques. But it had some super fucking cool ancient minis. The original Chaos Warriors, the original Lizardmen, some of the original Slon Toads, like the actual Toadman Slon. But it was just awkwardly kind of stuffed away in a corner.
Yeah, they're in display cases that if you were coming out of Bugman's, they'd be the first thing that you'd see. But there was no Bugman's, so the tucked away in the corner isn't normally the correct way to describe what they are, because they're in the main thoroughfare. but in the way that it's set up currently, because Bugman's is shut, it could not be further away from the main thoroughfare if it tried.
Yeah, but I could be wrong, and if I am, I would be more than happy for someone to correct me that maybe lives near Warhammer World, pops in normally. But I did not see a single large display that had Warhammer Fantasy, like a diorama type display.
Yeah, indeed. The museum pieces focus on their core games, focus on the games that they're currently.
Now, when you when you start the tour, they had a couple of the OG minis all over the place.
Yeah, totally.
But that's the only place you could find them.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. But once you were into it, it was focusing on the core of what they sell right now, and that totally makes sense.
Bronze Scorpion, have either of you played Old World? Yes. I've not played it in a little bit, but I played it
a hot minute, actually. Yeah, me too.
I'm personally, right now, I'm waiting for the Beastman Arcane Journal to come out. That's the thing. And Great Cathay. Either one. Whatever comes out.
Cathay!
I am probably about to start playing a lot more. I could say that. Morgantown, I vaguely recall them putting together a full chapter of Ultramarines, one squad from every store.
Absolutely spot on. That's what happened. And just after that, it was the Apocalypse 100 tour, which was 100 stores, 100 Games Workshop stores ever opening. I say just after that. It wasn't just after that. It was 5 years later, 4 years later. But it felt like that to me. Yeah, good times.
Something like that.
Yeah, I painted one of those squads.
Vorn. Granted, my experience is not as venerable as Andy's, but I've generally adhered to an annual pilgrimage to Warhammer World with friends and recall going repeatedly in the early 2000s. Going to Warhammer World back then was always a magical experience. Big demos for things like Dawn of War, Bugman's being creative. Over the years, I've watched the magic fade, and it's become a bit soulless, in my opinion. It's a shame.
Well, that's sad. I would like to disagree, but I saw many of those original displays also, particularly when there were, for example, displays for things like Dawn of War on. And there's nothing like that in Warhammer World anymore. Warhammer World is now largely a big shop with the miniature display off towards the side and the events era.
So, okay, instead of just getting all the way to the end of the super chats, I think this is a good moment to take a brief pause and just say thoughts of that. Getting up to Warhammer World, I've heard a lot about it. Like Warhammer World, especially over in the States, you hear about is like Warhammer Mecca. Like, oh, you got to go there once in your life. Like you gotta fly over there, make an excuse to go to the UK, and while you're in the UK, go to Nottingham and see Warhammer World. To the point that I've traveled to the UK numerous times, mostly thanks to Creative Assembly. And every time I went, people would always ask me like, "Oh, you're gonna go to Warhammer World? You're gonna go to Warhammer World?" And so I finally went. And like I said, there were some distinct disadvantages for Warhammer World at the moment, which was that Bugman's was closed.
Cheers.
And there was no major thing going on. It was just your average day to day. And to put it bluntly, and I'll explain why, I was pretty disappointed with the experience. And for me, the biggest thing was I expected Warhammer World to be the center of everything that is Warhammer. Like for it to be a celebration of Games Workshop's 40-year history. And it's not that. It's not. What it is it is a larger than average Warhammer store that has a first floor that you walk in and there is merch that is not exclusive. It's just random stuff from like some of their other licensees. Like there's some roleplay stuff. There's a couple of board games.
Displays and covers.
Yeah. So like there's some neat stuff, but you could buy all of it online very easily. There's nothing Warhammer World. It's stuff that other companies have made that they're also selling. Then you go upstairs past the nice banners. The banners are nice. Can't buy a smaller version for my room, which would have been cool.
Just hang them up round here. Yeah, awesome. Who needs a green screen?
Yeah, exactly. And you get into the main room, which is significantly more interesting, in my opinion, as a tournament room or an event room, because they had a lot of tables and they're high quality tables, which it was like nice. But I have also seen that at literally any major GT. And except for the GTs are bigger because they rent out like convention centers. So that was okay. Then me and Andy walked around and we looked at all of the stuff you could buy. And I want to make this very clear. I explicitly looked for something exclusive merch. I even went up to employees and said, is there anything I can buy here that I can't buy anywhere else? Like, can I get like a Bugman's mug, which I had heard myths about? Can I get a Warhammer World t-shirt? Can I get a lanyard? Can I get anything? No. There was not a single thing for sale that was exclusive to Warhammer World. That's not true. There was one thing. They had Bugman's minis from over the years, which
is always fun. I will admit to being slightly surprised at that, because every single time that I had been to Warhammer World previously, there had been unique pieces of merch, which were always cool. Stuff that you could only pick up at Warhammer World and nowhere else. And the closest that you had to that was like picking up the original Realms of Chaos books, for example, which you very much could buy there. But for most people, that's unique, but not for Sotek, because for poor old Sotek, he lives right beside a Warhammer cafe that has all of those already on sale. So the things that they might claim you can only get in Warhammer World, he on his side goes, no, actually, you get them in the local Warhammer cafe for me as well. So that made it a little bit tougher for him to find anything unique or interesting or exciting.
As an aside, my Warhammer cafe is not as big, admittedly. I don't know why they didn't actually make it like 2 or 3 stories. It's only a 1-story building, and I'm like, damn, they could have gotten away with making it 2 or 3 stories and would have been way cooler. But you walk in, that same exclusive merch is all right there. You got the Realm of Chaos books, you got displays, you've got like all of the like exclusive minis, you've got all the plushies and everything. Actually, one thing that they had that Warhammer World didn't, that was with the original opening of the Warhammer Cafe, is they have this really cool thing along the top of the wall that has box releases from the entire timeline of Games Workshop's history.
Oh, nice. That's fun.
So they've got like mini boxes on display. I walked over to their display case and they had actual Warhammer Fantasy stuff. They had a fully painted Dreadsorian. They had a full 5th edition Warriors of Chaos army led by Egrin von Horseman, fully painted. They had a bunch of display pieces that Warhammer World didn't have, including recreations of a full life-size Eldar helmet and a bunch of guns and stuff. Super cool. It was smaller, but I thought, and they didn't have the museum. I will say that, but I'll get to the museum in a second. So it was kind of like, oh, all right. So I didn't buy anything because there was nothing to buy that I couldn't buy at home, so I didn't have to worry about taking it home.
Yeah, that was the weirdest bit for me, actually. That was the first time when I was there with Sotek, the first time in 25 years of visiting the place that I didn't buy something. And it's not for a want of wanting to buy something. Even when I'd last been there, and it had been a good 4 or 5 years since I was last there, I was there with Gav Thorpe. When I was there with him, I picked up that's like a whole bunch of just bits and pieces, and Gav was laughing at me because of the amount of just stuff I was walking out with. And he dubbed one of the dice bags that I picked up the bag of change, because it had a big Zinch marker on it, and said that I should use it in Lorehammer to hold all the coins, like, you know, loose change. And it was the bag of change. And Gav thought that was hilarious, and so did I. And I still use the bag of change in the Lorehammer streaming room back there because it makes me laugh, and it reminds me of going to Warhammer World, and it makes me think very fondly of Warhammer World because that's where I picked it up.
Funny, I didn't see the dice bags at Warhammer World, but I did see them at the Warhammer Cafe. They had the 4 Chaos Gods, and they had them there.
They had them downstairs. Yeah, they had them downstairs. And this was the first time that I went in because everything there was either Forge World, the standard miniatures you can buy, or the stuff that I bought the last time that I was in Warhammer World. So there wasn't anything new. There was a bunch of plushies, but you can get the plushies at the local shop. So I was left just a little bit, oh, damn it, there's nothing for me to buy.
We actually walked to the Nottingham Warhammer shop, which exists for some reason, even though you could go to Warhammer World. But they have a Warhammer store, just a Games Workshop, in Nottingham as well, closer to the city center, and they had all the same stuff.
Yeah. True fact.
So now what I'll say here, and then we're gonna get back to Super Chats, and I'll come back around to some other stuff, is that the museum displays were really nice. They are beautiful. I could not help but notice that a lot of them. So the ones that just had like an army they'd painted, so you could tell the heavy metal team or whoever like painted it for the sake of taking pictures, for like the arcade journals or whatever, or the website, and then they took the completed army and they put it in this little case. A lot of those, which are nice. Yeah. They're nice to look at. But the ones that are like really exciting, like they had this cool like Tomb King versus Bretonia one over a siege, and it's like really cool. Those ones, I didn't see any that I felt were made in the last 2 years. Like the most recent one appeared to be the Tomb King and Bretonia one, which was for the Old World release, which was a year and a half, 2 years ago now.
Not long already. Cripes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a bit. I was surprised not to see more like
year and a half. January 2024.
But like it was cool. But I have this. So the biggest thing for me, and this is the last thing I'll say before I get back to Super Chats, and then we'll swing back around to some stuff, is that I suspect is a very American thing I'm about to say. Is that I have an expectation of when I go to like the cultural headquarters of a IP, that it's going to be a razzle dazzle. We're going to sell you shit and we're going to celebrate and it's going to be awesome. This almost felt more like I had walked into a small, humble Kickstarter shop that was very prideful about their initial release and just kind of hadn't the rhino is a perfect example. Me and Andy walked up to the statues outside, and we looked up at it. And I say this with genuine, no malice. I'm just staring it very bluntly that it was kind of ugly to look at because they're covered in cobwebs, they're dirty, and there was no pride. Like, there wasn't a plaque explaining who made them or when they were put out there. Nobody seemed to be cleaning them, despite the fact that they're just the only thing to look at. Because it's this ugly parking lot behind an iron gate with no pizzazz, no like, welcome to Warhammer World. It's just bland.
Spoken like an American, huh?
I walk up to the Warhammer Cafe. The Warhammer Cafe has the exact same Space Marine statue out front. The exact same one, but that one's clean.
Does it? Huh.
Yeah. The whole, like, the weirdly proportioned Space Marine.
The original one. Yeah.
Exact same statue out front.
Yeah. Interesting.
And it's clean. And granted, it's newer, so it could be that nobody cleans it. It's just the dry Texas environment and all that stuff just makes it look nicer. But it was like, when me and Ed were sitting out there looking at it, and I was like, these are ugly.
Yeah, cobwebs. Yeah, the cobwebs were unfortunate because there wasn't just one or two. Underneath one part was just dripping down one. I was like, oh no, that's not the best look for a rhino. Yeah, that wasn't ideal. I remember when I first saw that rhino when it was very first put in, and it was amazing because there had never been anything built like that before. There had never been an attempt to recreate our miniatures in real scale. It was a first, and it was freaking awesome. I remember the first time seeing it, I was utterly blown away by how freaking cool it was to be able to see a rhino. Now, admittedly, I looked over at the 40k statue of the Space Marine, and I looked at the rhino, and I went, you're not fitting 10 of those Space Marines in there. You'd be lucky to fit 2.
Yeah, that was the funniest thing Andy said. We were sitting there, and he goes, you think you could fit like 8 of those guys inside that thing? You look, go,
no.
Maybe 2 if they laid down.
Yeah, the scaling there was most certainly interesting, but it was cool as mints. But 25 years later, it wasn't dropped in 25 years ago, but 20 years later, ever it was, the rhino was put there. It's older now. And obviously, new things should be replacing it, much like the Stormcast that was sitting on the outside. That's new and funky. The big, huge symbols for the Warhammer world on the outside, utterly new and cool. But there's nothing updating at all. And it did feel a little bit sad and tired for poor Sotek to see.
Yeah. All right. We're going to do some more Super Chat stuff, and then I'm gonna get into the weeds. Man. Oh, a company wanting you to do more work because they recognize you're a good employee, but having no desire to go beyond the position you're comfortable in. Andy, I feel your pain.
Yeah, I was back then, Dynamite. I was really happy in Edinburgh because that's where Lindsay was, and Lindsay just got ourselves a new
It's such
job.
a nice city.
And it's such a pretty city, and we had our own needs in that city, and what they wanted me to do was be away from the city multiple days during every week. And I didn't want to be doing that. And there wasn't a good alternative. And I thought everything they were doing was cool. It was a really good idea. The entire restructure was great. It just didn't have space for me. So I was like, I'm resigning, and I'm happy you're changing. That's great. I just don't quite fit within the current model. Maybe I'll come back another day at a later date.
Yeah. Cole Patterson, if Warhammer had a theme park and if Fantasy only had one ride, which is probably what our luck would be, what would you want it to be? Skaven minecart ride, Lustrian log flume?
Oh gosh, that's really hard because there's so
really
many.
Hard.
I mean, you probably do it as an old world minecart ride, allowing you to see the dwarves, the Skaven, the orcs and goblins, all the underground stuff popping up above, seeing a little bit of the Empire, then diving back down into the depths again. Basically, something that allows you to see the highlights of everything that the old world has to offer. That would leave out Lustria, but you could do that as the second ride after the popularity of the first had been nailed.
Yeah, honestly, the trickiest thing would be nowadays, because GW has a very peculiar issue trying to separate fantasy from its past because there's AOS stuff and it's a mess. But in an ideal world, man, it's getting like a Lustrian version of the really somewhat famous, though it's gotten a bit haggard in its old age. The Jurassic Park ride at Disney World would be so kick-ass with the animatronic dinosaurs and stuff. Though there is a part of me that also would really love like a super lame Pirates of the Caribbean ride, but it's the Vampire Coast, but make it just as lame. Like, just super boring, but there's just like all these goofy ass vampire pirates. That would be very funny to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I would go to I'd go to any of that in a heartbeat. Is there a hidden closet filled with fishmen? There's probably
we didn't find
closet.
it.
Man, okay, I do have one big beef with Warhammer World. Why the fuck are there no bathrooms? There are 2 bathrooms with that. They're not like men and women with like lots of stalls. No, there are 2 individual rooms that lock for that.
That's because you didn't have access to the Bugman's bar part where the bathrooms are.
Oh, that's okay.
Totally.
I was losing my fucking mind over like
there's like big proper bathrooms on the edge of Bugman's bar, which you just wander through to and you can go in. Sadly, no access to those when we were there.
I retract that because I was sitting there like, how are they doing events with like 100 people playing or whatever? And they
get you to go through Bugman's and probably buy a few things as you go through, and then come back through Bugman's when you're through in the event space.
Yeah, the fact that it was a dead day, there was barely anyone there, and I still had to wait in line to get in the bathroom. It was
funny. I mean, not funny, but funny.
Tyrant, hear me out.
Holy crap!
Life-size Colex statue. But that would be like
that'd be cool.
That would be like as you're approaching Nottingham, the only thing you see is this like, dragon ogre about to like destroy part of the city. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it would be pretty cool.
A little impractical, but awesome. Honestly, just more statues would have been nice. Like they have a really nice Space Marine statue when you go in the store.
It's a good one.
That definitely looks like it was a gift from the guys that made Space Marine 2. That one was really nice. It's weird they don't have more. Like it would have been nice to like see like a squig statue of like life-size things.
Because like a little line of different things from, say, the Warhammer world, and you compare your height to them. This is a goblin. This is a dwarf. This is an elf. This is a human. Yeah, totally. That'd be super fun.
Like a life-size Gotrek and Felix off in one of those sides that you can take pictures with.
Just bring up this one here, and yes, it was the Weta Workshop one, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's Weta Workshop.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, I think so.
Tower 25, do you think of how prescient your parents were to name you Sotek? Yes, every day. Yep. That is definitely my legal name. Yeah. Absolutely. Bronze Scorpion, any ideas for Lorebeards merch? I mean, there's been like ideas kicking around, and it's something we probably need to do.
Probably is.
I am admittedly really bad about merch because I've tried to do it once and I kind of got burned. So it's something that I am reluctant to deal with, but I need to, but I don't want to.
Yeah, it's about time we got ourselves our own Lorebeards logo, eh? So if you got any ideas for what we should change our logo to, do drop them in the comments or pop into our Discord channels and drop them there. In fact, if you want it to happen, you're probably better posting it to me because I'm the one who's probably going to end up drawing it.
He's going to make it.
Like I drew the one that's sitting up there just now, which is basically just a mixture of the Warhammer logos down through the various editions, slapped together with and written as Lorebeards. And yes, I drew that one.
Mm-hmm. No, man, how many hot dogs could you make out of a Morn thing? A lot, I would presume. They'd probably be really nasty hot dogs, but like, not hot dogs. Admittedly, are
hey, Dino Man, great question.
Yeah, probably at least a dozen. I don't know. What I would say is how many hot dogs could you make out of like a hippopotamus? That's maybe a little rough comparison. Sean Soltz, what was one favorite and the worst thing of the trip? The whole trip. The worst thing was I got sick. I got really sick. I was considering there was, I think the Friday. No, it was the day after Lawhammer
on the Saturday.
Yeah. I was like kind of considering whether or not I needed to go to like an urgent care clinic. Like I was sick. I got better, obviously. Ended up probably just being a sinus infection. because I spent a ridiculous amount of time with Andy talking at him, and he did not get sick. So I don't think it was a virus.
It was great because for those of you who know me out there, you'll be aware that I catch literally everything that passes through the threshold of my house. All it takes is a fly passing by that once looked at someone that had a cold 2 years ago. That's it. I'll catch that cold. Sotek comes in feeling, I think I might be a bit sick. Cough, cough. I think I am sick. Day later, I'm sick. I'm dying. We streamed anyway. Everything went well. I didn't catch a thing, so it was brilliant.
That is so not practical for how dice work, but it's very funny.
These are PCs. Guess which number. So on the favorite and least favorite part, for me, the favorite part was just actually seeing Sotek face to face and getting to meet the guy and give him a big hug where he didn't kill me with Nurgle diseases. And the worst part was actually the same thing as Sotek's. It was seeing just how poorly he was when the weather was so glorious. There were so many things that we could do, and he just wasn't well. So he had to go coma sleep in his room. But that was also...
Andy and Lindsay did get to witness that I do truly slumber. Like, when I want to sleep, I sleep.
yeah, true fact.
People are envious of my sleeping powers. But for me, the favorite thing, honest to God, was the amount of casual conversations me and Andy got to have about just random shit, but a lot of like lore stuff was so fucking like. We had this really funny enough. We were actually talking with another person who I finally got to meet from a roleplay group I'm in. But we had this really cool conversation when we were walking by like an old bank in Edinburgh, where it was like, oh, like look at this ridiculously huge key that they use for like this ancient lock. And we were talking about like, wouldn't it like now that I think about it, wouldn't dwarf keys have to be really big? Because dwarves have like super huge hands. Their hands are a lot bigger than humans. So they would need large keys so they could like manipulate them well. But because the lock would be so large, it would mean that human lock picking devices wouldn't work on them. Because they're so puny and they wouldn't do anything. So in order to lockpick, so dwarf locks therefore would be significantly more resistant to lockpicking because you would need a very unique, large, cumbersome set of tools to do it.
Strength to actually move the thing.
Which was a super cool conversation that would not have happened if I was not over there. So
true.
Donoman, by human standards, most dwarves are demisexual but heteroromantic.
Probably, possibly, maybe. I think the biggest issue that we have here with attempting to pin labels on dwarves is that no one has had the, let's say, balls or the ability or just the desire to sit down and figure it all out and write it, and even just the plainest, simplest of a couple of sentences in English, meaning that we're left just making it up. And this is no great surprise. Games Workshop often focuses on what is core for them, which is war, not how do dwarves do it, and what are their relationships like? That tends to be a little bit more down on the roleplay side. But I'd say at the moment that it is something that's somewhat remiss on the roleplay side, because we have to, after all, roleplay these characters and the relationships they get into, and what do they mean? And as we know, if you can, someone's going to stick something into something else. So there's going to be all sorts of cross-species relationships in the Warhammer world as well. And that's something that is often seen to be a bit icky to deal with for your average Warhammer writer, so they tend to just ignore it, meaning that we're left on the outside going, well, we could write a thing where there's a relationship like this or that, but
yeah, there's this annoying paradigm where, and this seems kind of specific to war or GW IPs, of that GW gets really icky talking about things that a lot of role players care about, which are things like love and romance and darker subjects about like just life. And GW doesn't want those pinned down because they don't like talking about it, even though it's pretty critical to the way most roleplay games work. And that's
I'm not entirely sure I'm going to blame Games Workshop for this. I'm going to say that I'm going to blame those who are doing the writing for this.
Sure.
And those who are doing the writing are often the ones who will be in a position to decide whether they're going to write about it or not. And they often do one of two things. One, they self-select it out because they're afraid Games Workshop won't want to have it discussed, meaning that it doesn't get discussed because the writer thinks that Games Workshop doesn't want it discussed, so they don't do it, meaning that it never happens. So it's nothing to do with Games Workshop. It's just their perception of what Games Workshop is. Or alternatively, the writer doesn't want to do it themselves because it's not something that they're interested in. It's not what they consider to be a key component of roleplay. And you'll find that there are different types of roleplayers out there. Some roleplayers are interested in just hitting things over the head, high adventure, swooping along on a big rope, kicking the goblin in and going, ha! And that's all they really worry about. Others are deep roleplayers telling great stories. And because many of the writers often come from the Warhammer background, many of them might be coming from, say, for example, older school gamers, more of the high adventure types, or alternatively, I just played the war games. That sort of stuff doesn't often come up, but deep role players are the ones who are most likely to bring it into place. And I find it quite fascinating how many of the writers that I've been involved with, who I have hired, who just don't play. At best, they will play test, but they never actually play, meaning that they don't realize some of the core components of what makes for a really good story. So this stuff, I'm not going to lay it at Games Workshop's feet. I'm not going to say Games Workshop does want to include it. I don't know. I haven't talked to them about it. But I will say for certain that a lot of the issue isn't Games Workshop. It's the writers themselves and what they focus on.
So what we clearly need is someone needs to be brave and go over to Cubicle 7 and pitch a love and courtship book. A supplement. Just
Dating in the Empire.
Dating in the old world. Do it. You can do it. Sir Panza, please tell us something. So they're funny enough, most of the time, the vast majority of the time I said it correctly, but there was definitely one instance, I think on the train over from Edinburgh to Nottingham where I said Nottingham, and Andy was like,
I jumped him in immediately.
Yeah, he jumped on it. And it was the one time I said it. Like,
because I was waiting for that, because we all know what's going to happen at some point. A little bit like Edinburgh or some equivalent. Edinburgh.
I never said that.
You were very clear with your Edinburghs every time. But yes, the Nottingham does sometimes come out. The ham of Notting. Made me laugh.
Yeah, we had a ridiculous amount of conversations about like random pronunciations in the UK, and my deep displeasure at the vast majority of them.
True fact.
Stellar Rising, Arrow and Orion are two of the best fantasy characters, and they have lost the poll twice. How do we trick Lorebeard fans into voting for Wood Elves? I mean, you don't have to trick the fans. You could just come and like give us $100 and be like, do it, and we'll do it.
And we'll do it because we're easily bought.
You think I'm joking, but I'm not.
So easily bought. But on that, we probably need to have some sort of word for people who watch Lorebeards, because we don't have one. It's just people who watch Lorebeards, Lorebearders, Beardies, the Beardies, or something, because, we should.
Yeah, y'all, I don't know, y'all name yourselves.
So yeah, go out there, have a little think about it, tell us in Discord, that'd be nice.
Mr. Ford, I should stress I still enjoy going to Warhammer World with friends, but as a longtime observer, it just strikes me as so much missed potential. That I would agree. The Star Wars fandom have an interactive world / quasi theme park in World's Edge. Warhammer could have that, but the experience is unfortunately superficial.
Money! That would cost a freaking shed load. Having said that, I mean, I don't think it's unfair to say that the Warhammer World experience as it currently stands isn't that. It's not a big theme park. It's not an attempt to bedazzle people who come beyond explaining what it is to potentially investors, licensors, or whatever, to understand Lawhammer and for people to come and have a look around. Warhammer, pardon me.
I just wanted proof I was there.
Yeah. It doesn't have all the merch that says, I've been to Warhammer World and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. It's not that sort of place. It's basically a big Games Workshop store on the edge of an industrial estate.
The way I would describe it, the biggest way that I describe it when I was talking to somebody earlier about it was that, to me, it doesn't feel like Warhammer World. It feels like Games Workshop HQ.
I think that's fair.
It feels like their headquarters, not the celebratory cultural heart of the hobby. And I will explain why that is. Actually, you know what? I'll just explain it now. So here's my issue. So we talked about like there's a lack of merchandising, which is a very first world problem person thing to say. Of like there wasn't anything for me to buy, but I nonetheless felt it. Like that's how people express fan enjoyment nowadays is merch, and there is none.
At least at the moment. Every time I've been previously, there was. Just to be clear on that, but there very much wasn't when we were there.
Like, guys, just get some lanyards or some T-shirts. Like, it doesn't have to be elaborate. You know, y'all already have deals where you're doing like plushies and stuff. Get some unique one, or like, you know, give me like a fake plastic Gul Miraz or whatever. But anyway, the thing that really made me go ooh was that two things. Number one, there is no representation for anything outside of the miniatures. There is no celebration of the video games. There's no celebration of the movies, which, fun fact, there are Warhammer movies that are official. GW just doesn't talk about them. There's no celebration of their TV shows, of their board games, of their roleplay games, of everything that makes Warhammer Warhammer. A significant amount of the people that love Warhammer Fantasy, for instance, are the roleplay crowd.
Yeah.
Warhammer Fantasy, in many ways, between the time, which there was a bit of a gap between Total War Warhammer starting and, well, actually, no, Vermintide is actually a better example. Between Vermintide starting and the world blowing up, there was a gap. And in that gap was people playing Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. And which is, to this day, like the most profitable roleplay game of GW's many. Of like, it makes gangbusters. It's a very popular game.
Good game.
And there's no like the fact that I can walk in and they don't have like prints in displays of the original Enemy Within, which was one of the most famous roleplay games in the world, like actual set campaigns.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's still touted by many as the best campaign ever written for a role-playing game. And there are very few individual campaigns that can try and claim that title. And indeed, it's right there, and it's something that they own.
Yeah, so there's no celebration of any of that. There's no, like, pictures or screens showing off. Like, they have artwork from some of the army books in, like, specific little spots, but there's no celebration of, like, Black Library novels. There's no celebration of, like famous army book releases or, like, big tournaments or, like, some of the big events they've held, some of the past summer campaigns. It's so timeless, but in a bad way, where, like, you walk in to the mini displays and there's very, very little celebration of the history of Warhammer but there is stuff you could buy downstairs.
There is. And you can see that where the focus is. The focus is very much on displaying what they are today. And the miniatures, the great big dioramas that you can see as you make your way through the museum-y part, so to speak, the exhibition, is very much about what you can get today. But I agree, there is an absolute lack of what you can get elsewhere outside of Games Workshop today. And to a degree, I can understand that. But if they're looking to take investors round, or if they're looking to take licensees round, having something that along those paths have like displays of all the great licensed games that they've made for various computer games, whether it's the Blood Bowl ones, whether it's 40k, whether it's Warhammer, whether it's going right back to Dark Omen or going all the way back to, you know, Shadow the Horned Rat or whatever else it might be. There's loads of really cool IPs that they have been responsible for, even if it's just a single screen that's flicking through them all over the course of about a 15-minute repeated demo roll. That would be awesome as well. I mean, just showing where everything once came from.
For me, looking at the displays, so many of them felt like they just had the minis and they needed somewhere to put them, and they put them there. Because there's no like plaque. Another issue I had is that if I throw out everything that I'm going to come back to in a second about the other aspects of Warhammer, just focus on the minis. What I thought I was going to walk in and see was a display that shows off a collection of minis or like a cool diorama, and that I thought it would be modern, which if you go to like a modern museum, what they'll do is you have like a not crappy, but you have like a little iPad up on a display that has a little movie, and the movie should be like it should either just run on a loop, and it could do stuff like where's like a time lapse showing this being created if it was something relatively recent, or where's an interview with the person or persons that made it and like describing why they made it, what were the reasons behind it, why did they go with the schemes they went with, what inspired them. Like it's like going back to what Soren said earlier, I don't mean this in like a conniving, evil, scheming way. I mean it more in a lack of thought way, that it feels soulless, of like there's no identity behind each of the pieces. That was like, they'll tell you, oh, this piece was made in such and such year, and if you have a guide, you can hopefully they'll have some info on it, but there's no like pictures of the person that made it, or
just plaques explaining what each battle is, or what the game it's from, because often you'll find that many of the people going around don't know that much about what they're looking at, because they're a mum, they're a dad, they're a businessman who's passing through, whatever it might be. So just having a very clear, this is Age of Sigmar, this is this group facing this group, this is what's being depicted in this battle on a nice little plaque, that can make a significant difference for just understanding it. If I go back to my various experiences with Warhammer World, my best one ever was when I was getting toured around it by the licensing team. Back when I was on Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition. And the chap who was doing it, who I won't name and shame in this stream, he's the best. He went around every single display and explained it in excruciating detail, and also explained the different things that could be seen, and offered little bits like, in this one, there's one of these, do you think you can find it? In this one, there's one of those. And everything that he told me should be on a little plaque on each one of them. Like, for example, here's the big 40k display. Can you find the Calidus Assassin? It is somewhere. This is what it looks like. Where is the Tyranid that's doing this and chopping its way through several Marines? Can you find it down in the display? And it turns the entire thing into an event that you look at. And it makes it more enjoyable. I adored that visit. And I will be blunt, no difference. That visit to the visit that I had with Sotek, the actual stuff that was out there was no different. Of course, it was slightly different displays, slightly different groups. Warhammer miniatures were mostly gone at that point. It was mostly Age of Sigmar as well when I was there at that point. So, truth be told, it was really just maybe 4 or 5 displays that were massively different. But that was a brilliant visit because there was lots for me to do. But that was literally just with conveying of small pieces of information that I got from the licensing team. It was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. And it feels like that little bit of connection between seeing it and what's there is a little bit missing.
I mean, it makes me think, even if they didn't want to do physical stuff, which wouldn't be that hard. Like, I think back to when we went to Edinburgh Castle. They give you these goofy little things that have not good volume, that you have to hold up to your ear. You happen to have headphones on you. And you walk up to something and it goes, oh, if you want to know more info, hit 23. You go 23, enter, and it plays a little movie that you can like watch and listen to. They can just do that for every display. And someone just talks about the creation of the display. And like, if you look over at this part, you'll see this thing. If you look over this part, you see this thing. Like it.
And when you compare the amount of work that's needed to make that to the amount of work that's needed to make the displays, it's not actually that much.
No. So that was the thing that I think really got under my skin the most. Not in like, I wasn't like angry, but just in that's disappointing.
I suppose.
I expected to see, the best way I can describe it is I expected to see them celebrating everything they had instead of it just kind of being there. Like I was in someone's personal collection, but the guy who had painted it all just wasn't home, and I was just walking around his house.
That's one way to put it.
And that's what it feels like. It feels like you've walked into some random guy's house who's a very good painter and a very good at making dioramas, but he's not there. So you better hope that there's somebody who works there. That's because me and Andy had tour guides. So granted, we were rambling about other stuff, so we didn't have a lot of time to talk about the display. But like, there were a lot of families that passed by us because we were moving very slowly. There was a lot of people that walked by us and they don't have guides. They paid money and they got a little thing that let them in the door so they could walk through. There's no explanations for them at all.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame.
And it's like I cannot iterate how much I do not mean this in a way to like antagonize or attack anyone or anyone that may be responsible, but it just comes off as lazy. It comes off as they put the minis out and no one has.
It's James Workshop's house.
It's James Workshop's house, yeah. If only James, like, they have the I forget what his actual name is, but they have an actor who plays James Workshop and he's great. Just bring that guy on to do like little things about each of the dioramas. It would be great. Like,
so I think it's also worth adding that many of the dioramas have been there for quite some time, in that I remembered a significant chunk of them from when I'd been there 4 or 5 years earlier. So to say that it would be a waste of time to create something for each one of these, I don't think is the case, because even if it's only on display for a year, that's a year's worth of interactive use that you would get out of this potential multimedia. And if you want to keep it cheaper, it can be very easily just a small physical note that's put in place. You make it cool, you put a little bit of art around the edge, make it look like it's all 40k gothic or all spinny and fantasy in whichever way you want. But ultimately, it can be as simple as something that's printed and put in place, or perhaps sitting inside a metal plaque sheath with a plastic frontage with something cool written in it, explaining what it is.
Yeah, like they do at the zoo. Like that's what they do at the zoos. Like most of the zoos, it's not, it's literally just a piece of paper that'll have like a picture on the corners with like a circle around it to be like, look at this part of the exhibit. You might see this. And here's a little info dump about what's in this exhibit.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, it's one of those things where you feel like it was made, and the original ideas were super exciting and super cool, and everything got put in. I can't express how excited I was in the first few times I popped down, and then over time, its use was established, and no one's just sat down and gone, "Hey, that the use that we've established was made 25 years ago. 25 years, time has passed." And tech has changed and expectations have moved. Could we do something else with the space?
So Captain Carl Pesh, first comment, by the way, thank you very much, put up the TripAdvisor info for Warhammer World, which says Warhammer World is the home of the Warhammer hobby, Games Workshop's global headquarters and visitor center, a haven for collectors and gamers from across the globe.
And when it's doing its stuff, it absolutely is.
I think if I were to go like when Old World was being released and they did a big event, I would probably agree with this.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they've got, demonstrations on and they're showing you how to paint and they're doing all the things that they do in Games Workshops, it's a great place, but it does feel like it's older now.
Yeah, I don't hate Warhammer World. I want to make that really clear.
Wow.
It feels like it feels like it was built in like 2002, and it has not changed since.
I mean, it's not an unfair comment though, because it's largely that.
Now it could be like I will tell you that when we were there, we were actually looking at this little thing that was explaining when it would be closed, because they are renovating Bugman's, and they're actually going to be renovating apparently like the whole thing. So maybe it'll be that this was just the death throes of the 1.0 version, and the 2.0 version will be everything that I wanted it to be. And if that's the case, I will be so happy.
Yeah, beyond happy. That'd be awesome. But I'll be visiting again.
Yeah, but I am just sharing my experience as it was. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go. I'm not saying that it is terrible, but I am saying that it should be much better than what it is.
They absolutely understand what they have to do first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You guys, yeah, dude. That is important. Okay. So where was I here? Was it here? Yeah. Wait. So Warhammer World has missed out on the chance to have cool and unique stuff that would be an excellent business opportunity. Instead, went for cool but not quite as unique or fun stuff as they could. Sotek, what are you talking about? Sounds like Warhammer World is everything GW to me. So one of the things that
I'm not sure that I will say the Warhammer World has, particularly when it comes to the shop, changed a bit. When I first came into the Warhammer World shop, when Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay was first released, the shop sold only the stuff that you could get inside the shops, plus some Forge World pieces. And it didn't have any of the licensees' material in it at all, anywhere. It was just a Games Workshop with bells and whistles on, with extra Forge World goodies, plus some stuff that was unique to just Warhammer World Store. And that was cool enough then. And I remember having a conversation saying, could we get fantasy roleplay in the store? Because that would be great. And the answer was then, yeah, no, that's not what we do. But then take a look at the comparison to moving into the store this time around, where not only was Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay on display, but all of the various roleplay games were sitting there. There was piles of the new Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay books on offer. There was lots of the other licensed material sitting out in the stores as well. So whilst to me that's almost the bare minimum that it should have, that isn't what it used to be. It is a constantly developing thing, and the Warhammer store is more than it used to be. But then all of the stores are more than they used to be. Take the Electra Counts board game, you can pick that up in most Games Workshops nowadays. That wasn't the case beforehand. So yeah, things have changed a bit.
I mean, they had roleplay. They had licensed roleplay stuff at the little shop in Nottingham.
Yes, they did. Yeah. Again, they focused there largely on 40K.
Yes,
which is interesting.
They did have Soulbound as well.
Yeah, they did. Good point.
Yeah,
well
but
made.
Not Warhammer Fantasy, which is the best-selling one, which is odd, but whatever.
It doesn't support what their core games are inside the store. I can see why it's not there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing I will say though is, if anyone out there from GW does watch Lorebeards, which and they're like, well, we're renovating, what are these two idiots saying about it that maybe we could use? One thing that would be cool for the displays that I think is, especially because there are a lot of them that are just kind of like an army, which is like cute and stuff, but it's like, it would be very cool to see like using those same minis to make allusions to the licensed games, of like having like, oh, here we're talking about the enemy within, and having a little diorama of minis that you have nowadays showing off like a scene from the enemy within. Would be super cool. Or like talking about Total War Warhammer and showing like a little battle scene that emulates something from Total War Warhammer. Or like those other things of like using the minis, which is what Warhammer World's about, to emulate and be like, oh, look, here's a cool reference to that thing you like, random guest. That would be a really good use of that space, I feel. Kobo, yes, that quote was from Dark Deeds.
I even checked it myself afterwards, which was hilarious. So I didn't write the quotations. I'm pretty sure the quotations were written by Andy Chambers.
We're only Lorebeards on Warhammer, not Dark Deeds. We don't know shit.
That's how, I do. I wrote the bloody rules, but do I remember it? No. Plus, all the quotations from the cards, as I recall, are mostly either Mark or Andy Chambers.
That's super funny. Brandon's question: are there any reveals that you guys are excited for in the upcoming Skulls event? Personally, I'm waiting to call news with bated breath. Obviously, Total War Warhammer, we know they're going to be there showing off something. Very excited for that. Whatever it's going to be. I am also particularly excited for what Fat Shark's up to. They're doing something for the show. And Fat Shark always has pretty awesome reveals. A lot of people are thinking it's probably going to be like Gene Stealer cults for Dark Tide or maybe something. But they'll do some cool shit. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. The Skulls, funny enough, is very nice because GW themselves are not really doing it. They're showing just pure licensee stuff. Rather amusingly, they move much quicker than they normally do for their reveal shows. They're kind of like go, 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 go. They don't waste a lot of time, which makes it very nice to watch. It's fast, which is appreciated. Tyrant 25, soullessly corporate, very thematic for modern Warhammer world. There are good elements about it. I don't want to make it sound like it was awful. It wasn't. There was cool stuff. I just thought it would be a truly unique experience, and that's not what it is. It's not a bad experience at the moment. Could change. Yeah. And if it does, I will happily come back and do it all over again.
I'm really looking forward to Bugman's Open again, because I think even that alone would have changed the experience that Sotek had significantly.
I will say, I was very sad that even if we were just in the stupid little food truck outside, they didn't theme it at all. Like, it wasn't like it wasn't like a such and such dog. It was just hot dog. was like, oh, okay, like, all right. I thought we would try a little bit, but I guess not. Krimgelto, no purchase. GW must be out of Krimgelto minis. And
if they had a Krimgelto mini, I'd have bought it.
I would have knocked over the display totally on accident.
I'd have bought it. I'd have been doing
when
that.
When is Andy visiting Sotek? When the current administration lands at the bottom of hell where they belong.
It's fair to say that I currently do not have a great deal of enthusiasm to visit the US in its current shape and form, particularly given I have people I know who have been stopped in the most ridiculous fashions on the way through, and I don't want to experience that.
There are travel advisories to come to my country right now by reasonable countries. So
yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Not a good time.
No.
Oliver Smith, found you guys last week and been binging Lorebeards. Oh, well, thank you, Oliver. You guys are amazing. Drinking a Merlot from my Bugman's Leather Chalice.
I've got one.
I wish they had given me a leather chalice.
Yeah, see, now that would have been awesome. Yeah, I've got one of those too. I've got a few Bugman's bits and pieces that I've picked up over the years. But sadly, this trip, there was nothing that was unique to the store. I think we just caught it in a lull.
Yeah. We love a Lorebeard episode on Warhammer Fantasy Battle Cosmos.
Yeah, not hard to do. I wrote a chunk of that.
Yes, he did.
Araby's a toughie.
Oh, we can do Araby. We can easily do Araby.
Yeah, I mean, Araby in any realistic fashion is a toughie. In that it's old lore and you kind of run with it and hope. But then, hey, Dragon Ogres.
Yeah,
we did Dragon Ogres.
I mean, it does have the advantage of it did have a full War Master army list, which helped.
Yeah, it did.
So stay tuned.
Yeah.
Dynaman, they should sell Squig Space Hoppers.
If they sold Squig Space Hoppers, I would be buying them.
What is a Space Hopper?
Okay, so a Space Hopper, it's sort of got this face of ridiculous, very stylized face of a kangaroo on the front of a big orange ball with a couple of horns sticking up. You hold the horns, you put the ball between your legs, and you bounce up and down the top of it.
Yes, that would have been amazing. I would have bought one of those if they had sold that.
Indeed, that's what a Squig Hopper is based on, because it's a Space Hopper and it looks a bit like a space hopper. I remember discussing with Mark Gibbons about the first concept arts for them, where they're all like, this is too ridiculous. We can't make this, can we? And they're like, yes, we bloody can. Squig Hoppers it is.
Diamond, if you're looking for merch, I recommend chatting with Bricky, who has his Orchid 8 store, which sells both his merch and the merch of that is not a terrible idea. Okay, well,
sure.
I might. There's a very reasonable chance I'll be. So I'm officially. Sure, I'll announce this now. Why not? I'm officially going to Offkai next month. I didn't think I was going to go. Turns out I am going to go. So I'm going to go to Offkai, and I think he'll be there. So there's a very good chance I'll bump into him because we were talking about meeting up. So if I do run into him, I'll bring this up.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Don't worry about it. It's a convention.
I gathered.
Skylar Martin, thoughts on Elf Player's Guide? Aesthetic seems very Cathay coded, kind of weirdly so, to be honest. Like it was intended for Cathay, but oh boy.
Away you go.
It is not a secret that although I deeply love 4th edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, I do believe that very strongly that there are elements of it that Cubicle 7 has not been handling particularly well. It is rather disjointed, and there are a lot of very silly mistakes that have been slipping into all of their books that I've started to cover. And I'm going to continue to cover. This book is the next thing I'm about to do. I just finished recording last night my Mortals of Norska DLC proposal, which took me 2 fucking hours because I kept fucking up constantly. But nonetheless,
that's what an editor is for.
Yeah, that is exactly what he's for. So this is the next thing I'm going to be talking about. I do think the book was better than the Dwarf Player's Guide, but it still had some odd peculiarities that I disagree with. I will agree with you that the aesthetics of the book are a bit weird. There are notable portions of the book that, and I'll kind of discuss this, even though this is almost kind of more Andy's sphere than mine, of that Cubicle 7 definitely has made their high elves almost a bit Asian in aesthetic, which is very weird because that's not the proper aesthetic for high elves. If you're gonna like tie them back to real world stuff, you should be leaning almost more on like a Roman or Greek aesthetic. In my opinion, at least. Like that's a better place to look for inspiration. But you are correct, in my opinion, that there are some things that come off as almost Cathayan. And I don't know why that is, and it's weird. And that is what I will say for now.
Yeah, this is a toughie for me to even discuss with any depth at all, because I was once responsible for organizing this sort of material and deciding what people could and could not cover. So making any form of criticism at all just doesn't look good. I mean, I don't really like criticizing other people's work when they're coming after me. It seems weird. But I will say that if you're doing high elves, you kind of expect to see the core of everything that is high elves put on display, whether that's dragon princes, shadow warriors, the various types of high elves that we know and love, whether they're flying around in their silly little sky chariots pulled along like flappy birds. There's lots of cool stuff we can focus on, and the newer elements that were added didn't feel like they were taking everything that was already there and expanding it. They felt like they were new. And that's not my preference. My preference is to really feel like you're doing something that takes the core of what is there. What is high elf? And go, this is high elf. And what's often missing on the battle game side, you fill out on the roleplay side where you speak about real life, the real things that they have, the stuff that they move with. And it was, I mean, there's some nice bits in there.
Yeah, I misread your comment. I didn't realize you were asking about the aesthetic's career.
The career,
I was not a fan of that because to me that's an AOS thing. That is a Lumineth Realm Lord career being backported into fantasy, which was not needed. I don't think it should be there at all because the Hyos have a shit ton of stuff that they could cover.
So much.
Instead, they did that, which I was not a fan of. I don't like the aesthetist.
Yeah, I don't want to go as far to say I don't like it, but it's not a choice I would have made.
Which means he doesn't like it.
Yeah, I'm trying to be diplomatic here.
Sir Panza. I hear some mages use people as focuses to bear the backlash of spells. In unrelated news, glad to see Sotek is doing good away from I'm not going to lie. It did feel a little bit like I had somehow taken a bullet for someone else, but I can't explain it.
Hey, I've been well ever since you left.
No. Dominic Lynch, hi. Missed the Albion stream. Was in
Holiday in Prague. Nice.
Saw no vampires / sleeping god. Bummer. Question: would Albion army faction be like? Would they use old one tech like Lizardmen for Manon / cult to keep Celtic theme you rock? Well, we discussed that in the video.
We did.
They would probably not use a lot of old one tech. There might be little bits and pieces of like big single entity type things if they were to get like a full army. But what I would personally say is that when you're looking at the Warhammer world globally, if you're doing a faction, a humanish faction that wields old one tech, you should be talking about the Amazons. Agreed. And the Albionites, whatever you want to call them, should not be stepping on the Amazons' toes.
Yeah, agree completely. I mean, it's quite obvious that the Albions are basically your Celtic Druid army. And if you're looking for a Celtic Druid army, this is where to get it. And there's all manner of cool Celtic-y, Druid-y, Warhammer-y things that you could pop in there. It's something that Games Workshop are unlikely to do themselves anytime soon, but if they ever were to do so, the Celtic Druidic aspect, and whatever they decided to call those individual elements, for example, they're truth speakers rather than necessarily saying Druid, although you'll probably find the word Druid gets dropped about all over the place anyway. It'll all be megalithic creatures and entities and giants and similar giant causeway related nonsense. It'll be super fun.
Yeah, because there's a lot you could do with Albion. Like Albion's busy. You don't need old one tech. And if you did have it, I would only expect it as like a unique war machine or like some kind of augmentation on a character or a special character.
And again, you're probably going to look at something megalithic rather than old one facing.
Yeah. Yeah. Kornshima, would dwarf holds have the least homicide crime rate compared to all other settlements of Warhammer due to the dwarfs their extremely strict anti-kinslaying? Probably.
Yeah, I think that's very likely indeed. Now, it doesn't say it doesn't happen. After all, we know that it does happen under a whole host of circumstances. It happens in novels in a few places too. But it is always pretty rare. Dwarves have a different set of crimes that are prevalent to, say, humans, where murder and their short lives is quite common. But yeah, things like that, no. I agree.
Sotor wanted to say, I'm glad to have lived vicariously through Sotek through his trip. Sorry, the air over there was poisonous to Sotek. It was only poisonous in a very select number of areas, apparently. But to be clear, I am 99% sure I was sick before I even left for the trip, because I actually had a really, really bad night the night before I left. And then I just kind of got progressively sicker over the next week. So I'm pretty sure I was already sick, and if anything, the UK air made me better.
Yeah, let's say that.
And by UK air, I mean the copious amount of pills that Lindsay took me to pick up from a pharmacy.
There you go.
Yeah. Broad Scorpion, Andy, do you have an in-universe NPC of you in Wolf Rep? If not, I'd imagine a barkeep who runs a cozy inn with gaming tables, frequently by all races.
See, I don't really do that. And by that, I mean, I don't feel any need to self-insert. Having said that, though, on a few maps, I have named Andreas Richter, A. Richter, for example. If you go to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4, the double-page spread map at the beginning, it's by the Commissioner, possibly, or written by, I can't remember exactly what the words are, by A. Richter and L. Koch, and that's referencing Lindsay's maiden name of, well, Koch. In English. So that's the A. Richter is me, Richter, German for law. And that's about as far as I go. I generally don't do full NPCs. I do, however, use characters that I have built for my own games frequently as NPC fodder in games, because it's much easier to create something fully realized and developed if it's already fully realized and developed. So if you've got an NPC that works really well in your game and it fits into a scenario that's being built or an adventure, then I'm more than happy to use those, because it ensures that what's getting created is deeper. It's not something that's just spun out of a tabula rasa, a plain blank piece of cloth and quickly daubed with paint to fill a spot. It's something that has got a deep, long history already. And you can generally feel that when you're reading it as a reader, that these characters are deeper and there's more to them. But I generally don't do self-inserts. It's not really my thing.
Diamond, honestly, it just surprised me they don't have an actual Black Library theme like the actual 40k Black Library where you can buy all the novels and paperback books. Yeah, that would be neat.
I mean, all the books are sort of there, but I agree
there was like very little selection. The selection was terrible.
Yeah, it wasn't weird. I'll admit. I sort of agree. There is a lot of potentially missed opportunities.
Man, that would be super cute. Like, it wouldn't have to be like super high effort, but just like they like have little, like, it's like they make it look like the whole Eldar Black Library thing just over in the corner. That'd be very cute. You've
gone into the webway into the corner down to the Black Library. Oh,
come on, cool. DW, put some effort, put some elbow grease in the Warhammer world. I believe in you. Y'all can do it. You got the money. Benjamin Fraser, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. How old is it vote for GW that they can make diehard fans take the attitude of concerned parents? Well, you're not wrong, but it's just the people that get to decide where resources are allocated probably don't care that much.
Yeah, they don't care for the things that we care for, clearly.
Yeah, they care about those big shiny new mini releases, and then they're kind of hands off with a lot of other things. And I think that's to their detriment, but that is that individual's or group of individuals' choice.
Mm-hmm.
David, your thoughts on Games Workshop suing a large number of online sellers in U.S. federal court, alleging trademark infringement and false origin? Not super surprising as we're going into the age of...
at all.
Yeah, not if you know the history of GW, especially because we are going into the big age of 3D printing, where I know tons of people that own 3D printers. They're printing their own minis. And to be frank, with the way GW currently views itself where they very much see themselves still as a modeling company, which I think is dumb. And I'll say that very bluntly. I think that's an idiot way for them to look at themselves because they are so much more than that. But they think that they are a model company first. That is the biggest possible threat to them in existence.
Yeah, and we discussed this a fair bit, actually, when you were here. Yeah. That Games Workshop has to be careful that it doesn't have its Kodak moment. Now, if you don't know what Kodak is, it pretty much sums up every point that I have if you don't know what Kodak is. But Kodak used to be the biggest film printing company in the world for photographs. And Kodak had an opportunity. They were literally presented with the opportunity to purchase digital photography. And they said, no, because we do film. That's what we do. This isn't us. They passed by and Kodak died. It went from being one of the biggest companies in the world into almost nothing. And Games Workshop faces a potential existential crisis in the same space. But it has one massive advantage that Kodak doesn't have, and that's individual IP. No matter what happens with the current space that they inhabit as a business, for example, miniatures and producing miniatures, cool toy soldiers, no matter what happens to that market, they will still own the IPs, which are in and of themselves potentially enormously lucrative when you look to potential for other types of video games being the biggest multimedia business there pretty much is in the world, or alternatively TV, video and film. So they're always going to be able to make money regardless, but as it currently stands, their core business model is deeply threatened. And seeing them going out to attack those who are creating something similar to them in their space and defending their IP is absolutely unsurprising. And anyone who's attempting to make money off of Games Workshop by effectively scraping off some barcodes and saying, this isn't a Space Marine honest, are basically setting themselves up as targets anyway. I don't have a great deal of sympathy for people who do that because they are effectively trying to just make money off Games Workshop. But having said that, lots of companies out there who make proxy miniatures make some freaking cool ones, and it's a shame that they might not be around anymore.
Yeah, and I think especially over here in the US, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes down because I don't know how courts are going to rule on things like 3D printing, which is a very different sphere. And I will say it's a time bomb because GW can mess with it as much as they want. They can't stop it. It's like AI. It cannot be stopped.
AI is definitely moving forward, whether anyone likes it or not.
It can suck for a lot of people, and it's really scary. But 3D printing, I care less about. But 3D printing, it can't be stopped as much as GW would want it to. They can't stop people from making private STLs and sharing them.
And it's also really interesting to see how other companies have taken on board the idea of the STLs. When you take a look at, say, for example, Trench Crusade, which just sells the STLs, you go print your own. Or if you take a look at, say, Geogenesis, they're doing exactly the same thing over on their side.
And GW doesn't want to do that because they think selling plastic is the only thing they do. And that I agree with Andy.
And it kind of is.
It is. Like, that's their Kodak moment. Is if they look at the idea of selling STLs and go, no, never, we could never do this.
We don't sell digital cameras, we sell film.
Yeah, and that could kneecap them. Because I'll be honest, I genuinely think, granted, I can't say this with definitive authority, but I would say the vast majority of modern Warhammer fans probably don't own a mini. They probably play the video games or read the books or watch the shows, don't own a mini, and a lot of the mini buyers, I think, are whales, which are people that buy a fuckload of stuff. They buy an entire army, they paint it up or pay someone to do it, they play it, and then they sell it and buy a new army. Because I know a ridiculous amount of people that do that. But I don't think they're the majority of fans. And GW is not capitalizing on the majority of fans. And that could fuck them. Which would be interesting to watch. I wouldn't wish it on them, but it would be interesting to watch. Now, and as far as this goes, I will say there is also a very deep irony on GW suing people over IP because of what GW is and what they stole. Like, I'll say it till the world blows up. The vast majority of what GW started from, they stole. Eventually, they made it into their own thing. But if you were to wipe GW's history from existence and start them over with modern copyright law, they would never get going. They would have been sued into the ground by the likes of Michael Moorcock and Tolkien Estate and all of these other groups that would have ripped them apart, but didn't because things were different back then.
Yeah.
I would not be shocked if Michael Moorcock deeply regrets not going after them in the past.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. It means that he's over where you are in Texas right now. He lives just around the corner from you somewhere. I say that.
Well,
Texas is huge.
Yeah.
Okay, but he's over there. And as any of you who've watched Lorebeards will know, he created much of what we consider to be chaos today, right down to the chaos symbol itself. It's all from Michael Moorcock's works, and a lot of what we perceive as dark elves and high elves also came from his work. It's interesting,
which also means Eldar and Dark. Eldar, Dark Eldar, like at least.
But Games Workshop did create their own versions over time to begin with. I mean, the original models were just Melnibonians ported over for the elves. Okay, because Citadel had the rights to use those models, and they became the very first high elves. So it's not a surprise that that's how it occurred. And then over time, particularly as we move into the 4th edition of Warhammer, it became its own thing. And as we move through the editions and eventually hit 8th, they're entirely unique creations, no longer saddled with their original birthing points, if you will. But yeah, there's definitely something there.
Yeah, David, what I will say is I would be interested for you to send me if you got like specific articles on that, because I would be curious to know who exactly they're suing and why. Because GW sometimes works in, like, sometimes you hear a story like that and you go, oh, GW. But then sometimes, like, you see who they're suing and, like, why, and you go, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I often find that these stories get inflated and twisted as they move around the internet, particularly with people who have a bugbear or a grudge against Games Workshop because of some imagined slight from 20 years earlier when their favorite game was cancelled. And it's just no longer there anymore. Back in the day, White Dwarf was so much better because it had roleplay games in it or whatever else may be their individual concern. I loved Warhammer and they blew it up. And they quite like stories where Games Workshop are mean because they can say, look, see, they're horrible, and they always were. When you actually look at the cases, sometimes you're just left with a, oh, right, yeah, that's not at all what people are saying.
Yeah, I always take it with a pretty big grain of salt.
Yeah.
Because, like, you never know the specifics. Donovan, to be frank, the High Elves being Asian-inspired may be a mistake from the writers thinking they are more like the craft world Eldar because they're heavily inspired by feudal Japan, or at least the Western interpretation of feudal Japan. Or Lumineth Realm Lords, which are very Eastern-inspired. Lumineth Realm Lords are super Eastern.
And when you take a look at the actual inspiration from any of the craft world, you realize it's not Asian, but let's not get caught up in all that because we're not really a 40k leaning channel. I will say something on this. Back when we were dealing with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition, I was commissioned to write a High Elf book. And I was commissioned to write that alongside David Chart. And David Chart, who was living in Japan at the time, was chosen specifically because he lived in Japan and understood Japanese culture, because the core of some of the components that they wanted to include inside their version of the High Elves back then in 2nd edition was Asian leaning. They said there should be certain components of this that we port over because we want to have that feeling of a different culture to what everybody's used to in the West. We want to have the idea that the elves of the High Elves in particular are very different, particularly when you take a look at one of the core symbols of the High Elves, which is that sinuous line splitting white and black, the sign of Azurin, which is a yin-yang symbol. And that was a very common motif in Warhammer 4, Warhammer 5, and Warhammer 6. So around those areas, you'd often find yin-yang symbols sitting on elves. So this isn't a huge leap. The idea of people taking those older ideas and then running with them as we move into a new edition is no great surprise, particularly because it's quite likely that some of the people who were around back in 2nd edition still go, well, we were going to do this back then. But do I think that is a good view for modern High Elves? Not really. They are more the Atlantis of the Warhammer world. And anyone who goes into their great background historical research will go, Atlantis ties back to Greece and the great Platonic version of what Atlantis was originally and how it then got reflected into this weird society. And there's a lot of Greek influence throughout many of the High Elf aesthetics, so to speak. Do I think Cathay or Nippon or real world China or Japan are good sources for the elves? I'm not going to say no, but I am going to say
case by case basis.
I am going to say it's one of the many things that we draw from when we're looking at what we should do when we're writing new material for something that's been long out there. And the High Elves, definitely feeling like they are a different society to most of those that have been written by Westerners for a Western audience, is definitely worth looking at in a broader sense, but I'm not entirely sure they made quite the right choice there.
Yeah, I agree.
Probably.
Also, C7 unfortunately fell victim to a lot of what's going on in GW these days, which is that their dwarfs are short humans and their elves are slightly taller humans. I don't know. I really wish they'd
they got a little bit of balance in there. They added some extra bits for, the way the whole balance works with them. There's a bit more there. It's not as simple as
there's good stuff in the book. I think most of the written stuff in the book is actually quite nice. I liked it. Like I said, it didn't have, outside of one particular part of the book, which I'm making a video on, the Elf God section, which is very messy. The rest of the book, I read it and was like, cool. Yeah, I would use this for my games. I might change little bits and pieces, but I would use this in my games, which is good. I think that's a good thing. That's a good sign. Because that's how I feel about 99% of most books released by any RPG company. Is I look at it and I go, very cool. I'm going to take this. I'm going to put my own edits in, and I'm good. I'm good to go. Man, unrelated. Just remember my parents had an old GW game that bought a few years before I was born. Andy and possibly Sotek. Here's a nostalgia blast. Do you remember Chaos Marauders?
Okay, so I have Chaos Marauders, the first edition. I also have the re-release of Chaos Marauders by FFG, which came much later. So that's Fantasy Flight Games, which was basically the same game but made less good. So yes, I have Chaos Marauders, both the original and the second edition of it. It's a great wee game. It's a card game where you're building up a goblin force, a greenskin force, and you've got to try and get 3 regiments worth of them made before anyone else gets 3 regiments made to impress the big war boss. And it's got all manner of trade mechanics, including a really fun little rule. I can't remember if we made it up for the first edition or not, which is if you cheat and you get off with it, you get off with it. So if you steal a card off someone else's mat, get it onto your mat without anyone noticing, it's now yours legitimately by the rules. Super fun.
Why is it called Chaos Marauders if it's
because
about
back then they were all bad guys, including Chaos. There's loads of Chaos stuff.
So this is like,
and it also includes Malal in that one. There's like a whole Malal regiment. Loads of special regiments, a mixture of Chaos and Greenskins all the way through it, but the core of it is Greenskins. It's a super cool game.
I have never heard of it then. That's before my time.
The original is full of John Blanche's art, of all manner of crazy stuff. It's super fun.
So being Andy Fox Fulcrum and Scotland. Yeah, that is
great.
It certainly felt that way.
Truly great.
Ricky Chapman, they better add a Go Check and Felix ride to the remodeled Warhammer world. A ride would be hilarious. But the fact that they don't have like a stand that you could like take a picture with, doesn't have to be like a full 3D
sitting beside Gotrek and Felix. That'd be cool. Cool. You can put your arm around Gotrek and you're like, hey, look where I am.
How wide Gotrek is would be great.
Yeah, totally. It'd be awesome.
What is your favorite third-party mini maker? For me, it's Lost Kingdoms.
I don't really have a favorite. I've bought from so many companies over time at various points. Back when I was really heavily collecting Warhammer again, I say again, I've done it pretty much every edition. So we're talking, let's say the 8th edition times. And Raging Heroes came out with a bunch of Kickstarters to add female models to the range. I quite liked that idea because there was loads of weird situations in Warhammer where there were, for example, elves, but all the models were pretty much male. And it made no sense because in the background, their armies were made of pretty much 50-50 gender split, if you're wanting to view it in such binary terms. But all the models were men. And I had a house full of women collecting Warhammer. So that was my wife and my 2 daughters, all of whom were collecting Warhammer. And when they wanted to collect, say, for example, some girl miniatures, because representation matters, you like collecting things that are somewhat similar to you. Both my daughters ended up going for elves. One of them wood elves, one of them high elves. But the number of models that actually appealed to them were diminishingly small because Games Workshop didn't produce them. They just weren't available. So we ended up doing lots of conversions and messing around with different things. And I bought their Empire equivalent over at Raging Heroes Empire. They were all women, which is the exact opposite extreme. And many of the miniatures were beyond skinny and very daft, but some of them were pretty damn cool. And I really enjoyed them. And that was okay. That's a thing. But yeah, Games Workshop, better representation, please.
Yeah, I mean, they have gotten much better.
They have got loads better.
The AOS range is genuinely impressive.
Yeah.
When it comes to that.
Much better.
Darius Rose, what stuff from the Lord of the Rings movie was inspired by Warhammer since some Weta people were fans? Gimli feels like a watered-down Gotrek from Unlike the Book. I have no idea.
Okay, I'm going to call out one thing, and just one. Because obviously there is quite a lot of Games Workshop's cliches that have slipped into the movie version of Lord of the Rings. But the one I'm going to call out is making our orcs football hooligans. Okay, meat's back on the menu, boys! They're basically Games Workshop orcs dialed back into Lord of the Rings again. They felt very much like somebody had looked at the greenskins of Warhammer and gone, I like these aspects of it, and reproduced it into Lord of the Rings.
That's very funny. I mean, it worked. Well,
yeah. Lads, or they were basically the Cockney orcs. But yeah, their equivalent of greenskins were using the same accent, using very similar tropes. It was interesting to see that because it's definitely a thing that no, agreed with this. Yeah.
It is very funny how you see those things kind of reflect back and forth. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was really super worth chatting about when it comes to Warhammer World. Once again, like I can't say this enough, and I do want to repeat it because it's one of those things that can get lost super easily in this. Overall, it was a good time. I would be if they do renovations, I would be very, very interested to go back. But at the end of the day, I really wish Warhammer World would feel more like what the name advertises it as opposed to a slightly larger than average Games Workshop store with a pub built in. Because right now.
And a big display, because this display is significantly larger than a normal Games Workshop.
But those, in my opinion, those do lose their luster pretty quick. Especially because they don't seem to change them out that often. I mean, we a lot of the ones we saw, I don't think we really saw many that were less than a year old. Maybe older.
Most of them I already knew.
Yeah,
and some of them are very old.
They had this super cool one where you go into like the 40K room and it's like a 2-story diorama. It's like 9 feet tall or some bullshit. It's very impressive. But then you learn like it was made like many years ago.
I mean, I can't remember when it wasn't there. But it wasn't there at the beginning.
I was talking to one of our guides and they were like, oh yeah, like really impressive thing. It took them 6 months to make. And it's like, this thing's been here for like a decade and it took 6 months to make and you haven't made a new one? Like you made it once and we're like
done. Yeah. I mean, it's a massive endeavor to do. Yeah.
It is. And that's kind of the thing is that's why for me, I think that's the core of why I felt like it was a person's collection, not a grand company's showcase of that. For a company, they've got the hands, they got the money, they got the time to say, let's keep interest, let's rotate these out. As opposed to an individual who would getting something like that would be like, I've got one, I'm never doing this again. Because holy shit, that was a lot of work.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to view it. This is a site that had great dreams and great ideas behind it at the beginning. concept of pulling together everything that is Games Workshop and putting it in one place and creating this location that you had to visit if you like Games Workshop stuff. Because if you went there, you would not only have this great outpouring of awesomeness of everything that is Warhammer in its various iterations, but you would also have great gaming spaces where you could gather with your friends and play, places to paint, miniatures that you couldn't get anywhere else. Just cool shit. And that idea has never changed. I think everybody thinks that's what it is. I think everybody wants it to be that. And as 1 year turned to 2, and 2 turned to 5, and 5 turned to 10, and 2 decades passed by, as we hit now past, 27 years it's been going, something like that? It's a little bit less, 26 years, I think. So 26 years worth of Warhammer World, and the core of what was originally stated as its goal is the same, and it hasn't changed.
Oh my god, it opened in 1997?
Is it 7 that it's not open? There you go. So 1997, you sure? I think that's when they moved to Lenton. I don't think Warhammer World opened until 99.
Okay. Warhammer World opened in 1999.
99. So
26 years ago.
So 26 years, and the first version of it's very different to what we have today. The gaming space is so much better. The shop is so much bigger and has so much more available. But it does miss out on an aspect that Sotek was clearly looking for. And he was looking for something that was a celebration of all things Warhammer, much as it largely touts itself as. He was expecting screens that showed all the licensors and what they'd done. He was expecting Warhammer Through the Ages. Here's where it started with first edition. Here's second. This is when everything changed at 4th edition, and we established the Warhammer world as we understand it today for the first time. And here's how it moved to 8th, and then eventually moved to the amazing Age of Sigmar.
Right. No,
as we move on to next thing.
I wanted pictures of the people that did it.
Yeah, a celebration of everything that was. But Games Workshop is clearly using that space for a different job. That space is for showing the miniatures that they create and do today. It's for their business only. And all of the licensees and everything that they do, it's not their business. That's people they do business with, but it's not their business. So I completely understand why they're focusing on the things that they are producing. Unfortunately, though, for someone who's a visitor, much of what they're producing, if you don't know it very well, you're not going to understand what the things are as you walk through the displays. And it would be really nice to just have some signposting.
Yep. All right, just some of the cute little pictures they used to have in the old White Dwarf magazines of oh, look, there's Rick Priestley. Oh, look, there's such and such. Oh, look, there's so-and-so. Making these things back in the day.
that image of Brian Ansell sitting in front of his army going, oh, this is my army, ha ha ha, all the way from 3rd edition Warhammer in the army books. Yeah, there's lots of really cool images that they own the copyright to.
You know what I was expecting? I was expecting a 2000s White Dwarf made into a building, and that's not what it is.
Yeah, and I think
White Dwarfs used to celebrate the hobby.
I think that comment there from Syncopatics, I've almost certainly said your name wrong, sums up exactly what was expected there by Sotek, but wasn't actually fulfilled, which was an IP museum, a museum of everything that is Warhammer, with an astonishingly cool big massive displays at the end of it, where you see what everything has become today, and you walk into the last rooms and you see Age of Sigmar 40k, the coolest of the cool that they're producing now, as you've made your way down through the ages and seen different things. The problem with that, though, is that would mean that 90% of the museum would always be the same, because the past doesn't change. So there would definitely need to be some rather clever approaches if you were taking that. They have chosen not to do that. They've chosen instead to just concentrate on what they make today.
I mean, we say that, but I mean, walking in there, it really felt like 85% of it hasn't changed. Wow.
Yeah, fair enough.
Darius, Aslog's boring. Lurtz, Gothmog, and Sharku were cool. Yeah, I will never understand. Well, I'm sure it was money, but it was always a bummer seeing them go from the practical effects to the CGI. It was such a downgrade. I understand CGI Smog. Totally get that. He looked great. but like the orcs, why? Why?
I agree. Just as a small Lord of the Rings aside, the practical effects were better, the digital effects were worse, and the digital effects were not at the point where they could be better. And they weren't back in the first Lord of the Rings. They definitely weren't when The Hobbit came out.
Donman, it would be cool if for some models they would do like a human evolution diagram with the variations of model order. Yeah, that'd be sick. Like show like the same mini over the different editions.
Exactly, because in many respects, one of the reasons why things like that are cool is because it celebrates what's new, because it shows the evolution of how they started with these humble beginnings and they turn into these really awesome new models. Because one thing Games Workshop does exceptionally well, and that's create fucking cool models. Some of them are freaking gorgeous.
Yeah,
take a look
I would say GW is the best in the world at it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you compare, say, for example, the different versions of, say, the Strigoi vampires and see where they've landed when you look at what Age of Sigmar offers. Look at fucking Ghoul King.
Show me like, the evolution of like dwarf dudes. Show how they went from having these big arms and giant feet to like actual proportional bodies.
Yeah, it's good. But it doesn't do that. But there are ways that they could, I presume, support their current core desire, which is to show to be a showcase of everything that they create now, but also provide that feeling of a museum of all things Warhammer at the same time. But I'm not sure that's their intent. Many of the things that Sotek in particular is calling out, I don't think they particularly focus upon just now. Now, does that mean they shouldn't? I personally would love them to, because I like all things Warhammer. But all things Warhammer is not what Games Workshop is today.
Yeah. Well, and GW, how do I say this? GW has a nasty habit of coming off as a company that likes to pretend the stuff they've done in the last 5 to 10 years is the stuff they've actually been doing the last 40 years and kind of ignoring everything that came before that. Yeah, sometimes, like when it's an anniversary event, they will dig up some old mini or whatever and be like, look. But the vast majority of the time,
Old World is kind of overruling that in many respects, but it's not the core Games Workshop company. That's over in Forge World.
Yeah, and even then, the relationship is awkward. It's super awkward. Where they're like, "Look at Old World, but don't look at the Legacy factions. That's AOS. Don't look at those."
Steven,
like, yeah, it's weird. It's weird. They're a weird company. They're very strange. But anyway, so that was our trip to Warhammer World. Honestly, it wasn't that bad. I will say, glad we went.
Good. Yeah, totally.
We're genuinely glad we went.
Yeah, me too. It was good. I'm going to give a little summary, which is perhaps exactly what you expect, perhaps not. I remember when Warhammer World was first touted to me as an idea, and they were discussing the potential that the new head office would provide. And I'm not going to say the name of the chap who did it, but he had been involved with planning some of the ideas. And he was sitting with me talking about everything that was planned, and I could not have been more excited. We were talking about the various things that could be found inside it, how it would be this great celebration of all things Warhammer. And when it was first opened, it very much pushed towards that, a celebration of all things Warhammer, and slowly over the course of its first few years, developed what was there into what eventually became the Warhammer World we have today, which is a 2-story shop, a big display area, Bugman's, currently shut, and of course the exhibition area where you can play all the games you want on big lovely tables. The ideas are still there, but Games Workshop has moved beyond them. That, when it was first envisaged, was an astonishing potential. The idea of all these things being in one place was really quite remarkable, because at that point, the only Games Workshop experience you could get was going to one of the stores. That was it. And the stores were all universally quite small, outside of the Manchester mega store.
Yeah, they had s'mores. I would have been way more interested.
That'd be very different. Yeah, totally. In time, however, this significantly changes. And it does for a couple of reasons. Games Workshop moves from its big, massive games days down to more of its Warhammer fests, but equally, filling in that gap is a whole bunch of other Games Workshop experiences, like the Warhammer cafes in America, for example. And they all offer largely what Games Workshop is offering in Warhammer World. It isn't a unique experience anymore. Plus, if you go to any of the big tournaments, they're bigger spaces than what Warhammer World offers. Often, far bigger spaces. Meaning that Warhammer World is not as special as it could be. Now, the things that Sotek has brought up, the things that would make it special for him, are not the things that will be universally special for everyone. They are the things that Sotek would like to see. He would like to have a handheld tour of what Warhammer was, what Warhammer became, and what Warhammer is today, with nice little signs that you can read or little touch screens that you can touch, explaining what it is that you're working your way through. But for other people, it's a tournament location. That's what they would want. For other people, it's just the pub and getting as many different Bugman's beers down themselves as possible. Everyone has different wants, different desires. At the moment, Warhammer World doesn't peak the world at any of them. It is not the sole place to get most of the merchandise. It is not the best at anything other than, I would argue, one thing, and that's a miniatures display. And they are a miniatures company. And when you look at it from that perspective, you suddenly go, wait a minute, it's doing exactly what Games Workshop wants, because they see themselves as a miniatures company first. Not a games company, a miniatures company. And Warhammer World is the best single display of miniatures as it currently stands. Now, admittedly, you can go to big tournaments, big painting competitions, and you will see all manner of others as well. But you can't reliably go and visit them anytime you want. The only place you can do that is Warhammer World. And it absolutely is the peak at the moment of displays. So it does what they want. And it's very easy to criticize for the things that it doesn't do, but they don't appear to want to do that. Now, would I like to see them do all those things? Oh, hell yeah. I love Warhammer. I would love to have a whole bunch of screens laying out all the various IPs that they have covered in computer games and showing all the videos, early renditions from the Games Day videos where you got to see their first attempts to try to put to screen Space Marines and commissars doing their stuff. I remember going to Games Day back in the 90s and big, huge screens showing off these videos. They were terrible, but they were also full of youthful exuberance because they were desperately trying to bring to screen for the first time what 40K might look like, what Warhammer might look like, but mostly it was 40K. And I would love to see those on display. I'd love to see the evolution from old Games Workshop to new Games Workshop. But Games Workshop's more forward-thinking than that. They are just simply dealing with what they are today. And today, they are the best miniatures company in the world. And Warhammer World offers the best miniatures display in the world. We might wish for more, but that in no way means that Games Workshop has any interest in giving us more. So for people like Sotek, it is ultimately going to be disappointing because Sotek takes all of Games Workshop's outputs from the licensees, from the various games, be it video, be it watching stuff on Warhammer TV, whatever it might be. All of that is Games Workshop, and none of that is on display. All that's on display is their miniatures. And if you're looking for all of it, you are going to be disappointed. You can't help but be disappointed. And doubly so if there's no Bugmans. Because you can't just sit down and get yourself a nice burger sitting in the corner surrounded by Bugman stuff, which always makes people happy. And as it currently stands, poor old Bugman's is shut. So it left a rather bitter taste, I think.
I also don't drink alcohol, so...
Yeah, quite, but they're still good food. And it left a somewhat bitter taste because the experience was something he could have just got from his local Warhammer store. Indeed, he went and checked it afterwards. And he popped into his Warhammer cafe and he was like, yeah, everything that I could see in Warhammer World is here.
All of their coffee, because they mostly do coffee, but all of their coffee and food is themed.
And it's all themed. And I can understand why he'd be left disappointed. I personally would love Warhammer World to be more. And I'm sure there are many in Games Workshop who feel the same, because they love Warhammer and all of its iterations. They play the role-play games, or they play the computer games. They love what Owlcat's produced. They love whatever's coming out of Creative Assembly. They love Warhammer as a whole. They've got their various full-size Space Marines from various toy companies, and they will keep on buying more and more. And if something should be released by, I don't know, Antipodean companies over in New Zealand, big, huge Space Marine goodness, because what's the name of the company? Weta, thank you. Got there in the end, because Weta have created a cool new thing because they love Games Workshop too. Yeah, sure, they've got all of that, and they would love to see more. But ultimately, that's not the decisions that are being made. The decisions that are being made at Games Workshop, at least as it appears from the outside, is to create something that celebrates who they are. And it's a celebration of miniatures.
The last thing I'll say is that GW, let me love you and buy stuff. For the love of God, just make something I can buy. Stop using to take my money.
Yeah. I had money burning in my pocket and I didn't buy anything either. So it's actually the first time I didn't, which was, I'm just going to say one more time, weird.
Yep.
Just weird.
Could just be the Bugman's clothes, and that's all it is. But
yeah, could be, totally.
Darman, something I've noticed as a pattern, Lorebeards. Writer 1, can I do X? GW, we have no clear info, so sure. Writer 2, can I use X? GW, no, absolutely not. Writer 3, can I use X without asking GW, or uses X without asking GW, still ends up in a core army book. Writer 4, so how should I address this? Should I use X or not? W, just don't talk about it at all.
I mean, that's a slightly exaggerated view, but that's not entirely wrong in some respects. In that, often you'll have writers asking if they can do something, and I will be as blunt as I can be. Games Workshop are the best partners. They want the best for their worlds and the things they create. They just want to make sure it's right. And they almost always, if you're asking them, can I create something that fits exactly within your world and details things that Games Workshop have yet to detail? Go, yeah, sure, go. That's what you're there for. The license is there for you to explore these ideas. Go wild. People are going to love this stuff. But sometimes people go too far. It's true. Or they just get it wrong. And then that becomes the new norm.
Yeah, and your mileage may vary.
Yeah, very true.
I wanted this because it came up as a sub message, so I didn't see it. Sotek, I asked Andy's favorite diorama the other day. He said Horus and Big E. What was yours?
Yeah.
Also, I love your idea of North American centaurs, a chariot with a spiky plow on the front that is pushed. Seems I want centaurs so bad. My favorite, it's actually pretty easy. For me, my favorite diorama was easily the Bretonian Siege. Because it's a nice big piece. They've got like the Necrolith bone dragons flying in the air. Setcher the Imperishable is like charging down a road that's about to end in front of him, so he presumably needs to do something about that. They've got like all these they did a lot of very inventive things with the minis. Like there's a bone giant that's like running. That looks super cool. There's like Bretonian charge coming down the hill. The city is all like fucked up and there's people fighting all over the place. It's just very alive feeling. And it is
a fine diorama. And that was one of the ones I hadn't seen before. So I was rather pleased to look over that one.
Yeah. So that one was baller. That was great.
It was. Agreed.
But yeah, I think that's kind of it for us. Sorry.
I was about to say there's another comment there. Don't miss Darius.
One epic diorama for Warhammer World from the lore, what would it be? Blackfire Pass or Siege of Kislev for you?
Blackfire Pass would be Siege of Kislev would be pretty. So I've done a map of the Siege of Kislev for Black Library. I have a lot of personal love for that battle because of that, because I spent a lot of time discussing the elements of what should be included. So I would love that, particularly because you get to see all of those marvelous Kislev buildings, which would be super cool. But Blackfire Pass would be arguably much less cool, although a central fight between Sigmar and what's-his-face, the Orc, would be pretty freaking cool.
I personally think that the final battle at Kislev's Gates would be fucking baller.
It would, wouldn't it?
You would get to show off so many different things, a lot of different factions too, because there'd be dwarf, You'd have Teclis out there casting magic. You'd have Azavar Cool about to go up against Magnus the Pious. You'd have like the big cavalry charge coming down from behind Cool's forces and like demons and all. It would be pretty fucking nuts.
It would. I think the Siege of Kislev would be pretty extraordinary. I don't think that would probably happen because Kislev has never really been a focus for Games Workshop. So that very much might change should they release an army.
I can only see that happening at like the finale of the Old World.
Amazing,
the current view of the Old World. Which granted might be even more crazy because we've got all these new races now. So like Cathayans might be there.
Yeah, I see no reason why Cathay wouldn't be there as a potential ally. If I was rewriting it, I would very much have them coming across the northern passes to provide support come the last battle, the fight for the Old World's existence. That'd be pretty damn cool.
Yeah, I think the greatest hope is that the Battle of the Gates of Kislev will be so much bigger than its original version. Its original version was pretty big. Just a couple little, pretty much, but just a couple little things here of stuff coming up. This Friday, is Lorehammer back on?
Dragons. This Friday, yes, Lorehammer is back on, and we will be dealing with the mess that was left after Sotek was here. There was an explosive end. Let's just say that if you haven't watched it, and you should go watch it if you haven't, it's a great place to step in if you want to just have a little look at the ridiculous stories that we get involved with. Sotek was over and it ended somewhat explosively, and we will be opening with the ramifications of what occurred. That'll be this Friday. Am I going still? Has Sotek frozen? I think Sotek's frozen. I appear to be here by myself. Everyone else is saying, so did Sotek freeze? He's frozen. Who wants to speak to Sotek? So after that, I'll say that we have an Inside the Rookery on the Saturday at 7 p.m. UK time, where we will be discussing something. I'll go check it up afterwards. Oh, I'm just down to me. Hey, oh, look at me, I'm huge! On the Sunday, we'll be talking Blood Dragons, and that will be over on Loremaster of Sotek's channels. We will be diving into all of the deep lore about where the Blood Dragons came from and what the Blood Dragons actually are on the Warhammer World stage. I do believe he's returned. There you are, you're back.
That's the second time that's happened. That's
there you go. So the Wednesday after that, so that's after Blood Dragons, we will be diving into the colleges of magic. And we will be doing a tier list for the different colleges and exactly how the different versions of magical schools represent around the Warhammer world.
Yeah, it'll be the Hogwarts special.
Yeah, Hogwarts special for Warhammer. Yeah, that's going to be super fun.
So should be a super duper good time. Yeah, apologies. I don't know what the hell caused that, but
yeah, that was a bit weird.
Yeah, so in any event, yeah, that's pretty much everything.
I should say what we're doing inside the Rookery on the Saturday. I'm actually going to look it up to be a good boy so that they don't shout at me over on the Rookery side.
You just posted it.
Okay, yeah, indeed. I literally just posted. So we're going to be discussing how to build a better sandbox with Bastion Land, Chris from Bastion Land, and we're going to be discussing how in roleplay games we can build proper sandbox worlds that you can interact with as a group that doesn't require a fixed plot to move through and generates its own interesting campaign material. There we go. See, I did know. I totally did.
Yeah, that's us done.
We're done.
A little shorter than usual, but this was kind of a different, weird kind of like talk about the trip episode, so that's fine. But we will be back super soon. Tomorrow, Skulls.
Oh yeah, tomorrow Skulls is on, isn't it? I might be there tomorrow. We'll see. I think Sotek will definitely be there tomorrow, so make sure you don't miss it.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and put up lobbies. If you see lobbies also show up for Lawhammer, then you know he'll be there, and if they don't, it's just me.
Yeah, exactly. I'd much prefer it as both of us because that's more fun.
Yeah, but we'll let you know, and we'll see y'all hopefully then.
Until then, bye-bye!
Bye-bye!